the world where the oceans boiled away. The only resource is sand that shifts with every step. The last sand mage on Earth wears a fire gauntlet. No one realizes he's the most dangerous man in the desert. His name is Zeon, a survivor who learned the entire desert answers to him. But in Neo's soul, hiding his power is the only way to stay alive! The Sand Wraith doesn't fight for glory. He fights like a man who knows every grain of sand. He's a weapon. This is Sandmancer of the Scorched Desert.
The system catches our boy mid-punch, amber eyes flaring like someone just alt-tabbed into a boss fight they didn't queue for. Rewind to the chaos before the glow-up, sand screaming through the air like a particle effect on max settings, Zeon's gauntleted hand reaching through it all, and something beneath the dunes going absolutely feral with hunger. Our protagonist is currently face down in what used to be a truck, now repurposed as sandworm interior decoration, and the debris is still settling like the universe is waiting to see if he gets back up. Earth got the worst patch note in galactic history, oceans deleted, sand downloadable content mandatory, and the remaining humans crammed into Neo's soul under enough wires to make a server room jealous. The truck kicking up dust? That's the express service to the mines, which is less public transit and more one-way ticket to becoming a statistic. Zeon opens his eyes, and the first thing he registers is not survival instinct, not gratitude, but the deeply inconvenient realization that he is now glowing with enough golden energy to make a Final Fantasy protagonist jealous. Meanwhile, the local talent pool is exactly what you'd expect from a post-apocalyptic penal transport. One guy's hand just slipped into someone's ribcage, and another shirtless gentleman would like your name for his apology letter, which is absolutely not a threat disguised as manners. Zeon gives his name like he's handing over a fake ID at a club he's not old enough for, and the blonde fighter immediately pivots to asking about his parental situation with the energy of someone who has never faced consequences. The rune notices Zeon's temper flaring, which in this economy is basically a death flag with extra steps, but the blonde man drapes an arm around him like they're old friends and suggests smiling more because apparently emotional repression is the group activity. The narration drops the thesis statement like it's late for class, criminals, or runaways. They're all the same trash heading for the same bin. Zeon answers by lunging forward with a fistful of golden sand and the kind of eye contact that makes you check your own health points bar. Someone gets launched through a doorway with enough force to qualify as environmental storytelling, and Zeon stands there with bandaged arms and clenched fists, looking like the tutorial boss just realized he's actually the final encounter. A shadowed figure leans in with the worst pickup line in the wasteland. You want to know? Zeon lunges again because once is never enough in shonen, his eyes still doing that thing where they promise violence his body hasn't quite caught up to, and then the ceiling itself decides to join the conversation with what can only be described as divine impatience. Neo's soul gleams in the background, all neon and denial, while the narration delivers the coldest line in the chapter. Only residents here count as human, which means everyone outside is just waiting to become a monster's lunch or a mine's inventory. Zeon stands over his fallen opponent in a corridor that has seen better centuries, and the message is clear. The city doesn't care if you make it, but the sand definitely has opinions. A bloodied man on the floor learns the hard way that name-dropping your connection to Lee Ji-ryung is less get-out-of-jail-freeze and more congratulations. You've summoned a bigger problem, while across the panel divide. Some awakened showboat channels enough electricity to make a BTS lightstick look understated. The hierarchy is being established in real time, and Zeon's still figuring out which tier he accidentally subscribed to. Zeon blinks and suddenly his survival instincts are doing the math his brain hasn't caught up to yet, because that amber-eyed stare is the universal expression for, I just realized I'm the protagonist of something terrible. Someone says, hey, with the energy of a man who has already decided violence is the answer, and before Zeon can process the social cues, blood hits the panel like a content warning. Zeon looks at his own hand like it's a new patch he didn't read the notes for, muttering about why it won't stop doing protagonist things while his eyes glow with the kind of amber that says the tutorial is officially over. The vehicle becomes a pinball machine with human trauma, and somewhere in the chaos, a white-haired man screams with the commitment of someone who has definitely been in worse dungeons than this. Zeon gets the worst pep talk in transportation history, something about shared motivations delivered by a man whose idea of teamwork is making sure everyone bleeds equally, and our boy responds with the emotional vocabulary of a man whose fight or flight is permanently stuck on both. The crowd gets that look in their eyes, the one that says they've been waiting for an excuse, and Zeon is dodging grabs like he's playing a rhythm game on hard mode, while the world tilts into a sand vortex with commitment issues. Zeon dashes forward with sand doing things physics never approved, and some bald guy is yelling about driving skills like, that's the relevant skill tree here. While another man's face erupts with red energy in what I can only describe as patch notes, emotional damage now has a visual component. The screaming gets orchestral. Someone's tumbling down a stairwell with the grace of a drop controller, and Zeon's eye goes wide with that specific expression that means he's about to learn something the painful way. We're getting eaten is not a sentence anyone wants to hear in any context, but especially not when the panel reveals a sandworm the size of a small government building with teeth that have their own zip code. Zeon crashes into the chaos with the desperation of someone who skipped the tutorial, sand swirling around his fist like the game finally decided to register his inputs, while two figures grapple on the floor in what I can only describe as unwilling speedrun strats. The narration drops the coldest line in the chapter like it's nothing. Getting eaten by a sandworm isn't special to him anymore, which is either the most traumatized flex I've ever heard or the most honest review of public transportation in Neo Seoul. Zeon reaches through the sand like he's trying to grab the plot itself, fingers curling around something that shouldn't be there, while the cavern groans with the sound of a world that has no intention of letting him go gently. His amber eye ignites with the kind of glow that makes you check if your screen's brightness is broken, sand particles doing a choreo that would make a twice performance look under-rehearsed, and somewhere in the static of his own pain, he's finally hearing the system patch download complete. Zeon hunches in the aftermath, every breath a loot drop of agony, and for one panel we see what the desert made of him, not a hero, just a kid who refused to die in the right order. The world opens up into ruins that used to be civilization, a rusted scaffold burning against an orange sky like the game's art team got personal, and somewhere in the wreckage a stone spike rises from the sand with the energy of a middle finger to whoever terraformed this planet. Zeon stands before the spiral with tears and grit doing an uneasy collab on his face, amber eyes finally seeing what the desert always knew, that power doesn't ask permission, it just waits for you to stop being small enough to ignore. The sand erupts like the environment finally got tired of his protagonist hesitation, a dragon-shaped silhouette of pure denial lunging from the storm, and Zeon's stance says he's not running anymore, he's just deciding which direction to win in. He collapses behind a veil of golden light, not dead, just buffering, while birds scatter from a cliffside, like the world itself is logging out of the encounter. Zeon staggers forward with sand in his tears and defiance in his jaw, staring down a stone maw that could swallow cities, and the desert finally whispers what we've been waiting for. This kid's not just surviving the apocalypse, he's filing a complaint with it. Zeon stands in the sandstorm looking at his hands like they just downloaded a firmware update without permission. Every cell vibrating, he says, like his body finally got the patch notes for survival mode. The sandworm's maw opens like a loading screen for death itself, all teeth and patience. The ground shatters under whatever this thing calls footsteps. Zeon leans back in the crystalline chaos, arms out, balancing between becoming paste and becoming legend. A shadow tree erupts from the earth like the desert decided to grow its own final boss. Some bandaged figure splits the panel with an exclamation. Not Zeon, not yet, just someone else getting the memo that the difficulty spike is real. Zeon crouches on splintered wood looking back over his shoulder, and that expression right there is the universal face of, I did not spec into this encounter. Then the hit lands and Zeon's body arches like a question mark, made of pure agony, sand erupting around him in golden protest. His amber eye goes wide, not with fear, with recognition. The kind of look that says, oh, so that's where the damage cap is. The Korean sound design team earns their paycheck with whatever two-syllable devastation just got branded into this panel. Zeon goes flying backward through his own golden aura, a human-shaped error message in a system that didn't account for him surviving. He lands bandaged first in the sand, legs still processing the flight itinerary, and lets out a sound that translates roughly as, this was not in the tutorial. Kneeling there, straining, he gets half a sentence out before the next problem arrives. When did this thing get this close? Flat on his back, amber eyes staring up at something that blocks the sun, Zeon's face says everything his mouth can't. This is the moment where you find out if you're the protagonist or the cautionary tale. Sweat and sand and the specific silence of a man recalculating his entire survival strategy. And descending through the haze comes a cloaked silhouette, all tattered edges and long shadow. The kind of entrance that makes you check if your own backstory is interesting enough for this crossover episode. Someone's here to collect, or to teach, or to make Zeon's day comprehensively worse. In this genre, it's rarely just one. Some grizzled old man just looked at a descending warhammer the size of a sedan and decided, yes, first floor, please, like he's selecting a difficulty setting in a roguelike. The resulting explosion is not a tutorial, it's a personality test, and everyone in the blast radius just failed. Zeon is out here trying to pull a sword from the sand like some budget Excalibur reenactment, except the sword is actively winning, and he's having an existential crisis about awakened people mid-struggle. The blade's not stuck, it's asserting dominance. Enter Captain Jang Yong Beam, and his hype squad is already doing fan chants like he's a Twice member at a music bank stage. Zeon and Arya are losing their minds over this man's kill speed, which is funny because 5 minutes ago, Zeon thought he was the main character. Giselle shows up with the kind of chaotic energy that makes her arm literally freeze mid-conversation, then salutes like this is all perfectly normal. She's either the strongest person here or the most unhinged, and in this genre, those are rarely mutually exclusive. Zeon gets launched airborne with the trajectory of a failed Skyrim horse launch, complete with the AARG that every speedrunner knows as the sound of physics breaking. The sand does not catch him. The sand watches, disappointed. Plot twist of the century, Zeon has no rank crest. Giselle is out here calling him unawakened like he's a fake sneaker, and the "that's bullshit" he fires back has the desperate energy of someone whose main character privileges just got disputed. The system really said, we'll get back to you on that. Arya's over here trying to negotiate Zeon's prisoner transfer like she's haggling at a desert flea market, and Captain Zhang's solution is to yeet him into the transport with all the gentleness of a Dark Souls invader. Zeon's face in that moment is doing more emotional labor than his sand ever has. The Jeep ride through the desert is giving Mad Max, but make it public transit, shell casings overhead, chaos in the cabin, and someone's definitely not using their inside voice. Zeon is now officially cargo, and the cargo is having regrets about every life choice that led to this Uber pool from hell. Zeon collapses in the transport like a phone at 2% battery, and in the quiet aftermath he finally notices his rank crest is orange. Not F-rank green, not the standard palette, orange. The Manhwa is color-coding him as a limited edition drop, and nobody's told him what the gacha rates are. Bound, exhausted, surrounded by sand that suddenly answers to him like a Bluetooth device finally pairing, Zeon gets it. The desert whispers back. He feels the infinite potential like a patch note he wasn't supposed to read yet, and the grin that follows is not the grin of a man who plans to stay hidden. It's the grin of someone who just realized he's playing on a private server. The resolve hits different now. Zeon kneels in golden sand, eyes hidden, making a promise to himself that sounds suspiciously like a villain origin story if you were already on his side. Keep it hidden and endure it. The classic hidden, overpowered protagonist mantra, except the sand around him is already RSVPing to the coming chaos. The globe in his bound hands is not just a prop, it's a threat wrapped in metaphor. They roll up to the mana stone mine, and the first thing Zeon notices is that it looks almost normal. Checkpoint, infrastructure, the whole corporate dystopia aesthetic. The propaganda poster in the background says, "Making Neo's soul shine with our labors," which is doing a lot of heavy lifting considering the labor in question is mostly dying in shafts. Park Manhwa shows up with the subtlety of a raid boss entering Phase 2, screaming orders while Zeon is still technically tied up. The "shut up before I tie your mouth shut" energy is peak middle management villainy, and the way Arya just vibes through it with a yes-yesids tells you everything about who's actually surviving this place. Zeon says no, with the kind of quiet finality that makes the air stop. And then the sky itself answers with something that is definitely not weather. His "what on earth" is not confusion. It's the sound of a man realizing the tutorial zone had a hidden final boss, and he's been walking toward it with his eyes closed. The mine settlement doesn't bother with subtlety. You step off the transport and immediately get sized up by a bald guy with a sword who looks like he lost a bet with his barber, surrounded by kids who think they're in a gang and not a labor camp with better lighting. Zeon, still bound, still hungry, casually catches a punch mid-air like he's been doing this since Tutorial Island. The bullet casing sparking between them is just ambient decor at this point. Some cloaked enforcer yells about shutting up until the person in charge arrives, which is code for, "We have no idea who's actually running this." Arya, brown hair, knife at her hip, already giving "I did not sign up for this shift" energy, asks if they're really doing this whole hostage thing. Meanwhile, some guy threatens to put a bullet in his own head, which is either the worst negotiation tactic or the best character introduction I've seen all week. A scarred man holds up a fist like he's about to explain the housing market to Zeon, while a kid behind him processes the ambient trauma in real time. Zeon, meanwhile, has exactly one priority and one priority only: finding somewhere to eat. The man's been through a sandworm digestion and a dungeon collapse. His stomach has a standing appointment with vengeance, but first, noodles. He finds a food cart because, of course, this dystopian hellhole has street food. Capitalism finds a way. The vendor's a gray-haired man who looks like he's seen things, and Zeon's amber eyes go wide with something between hope and the recognition that he's about to get scammed. And then the camera pans to the wall. "Making Neo's soul shine with our labor." The propaganda poster hits like a sponsored ad in a funeral home. That glowing gem the worker's holding? That's a mana stone. That line of comrades? That's the shift before yours that didn't make it back. The slogan should really read, "Making Neo's soul shine with your insides." Someone offers Zeon a drink and calls it dope, which is how you know this translation has personality. But the real move is the scarred hand reaching from the shadows, because nothing good in this manhwa happens from a scarred hand reaching from shadows. That's Chapter 1, Rules. Zeon, bandaged and confused, asks what they mean about the energy source, because he's still naive enough to think questions get answers in this economy. Some goggled Smith type points at him like he's just won the worst lottery, and the speech bubble says "you," with the enthusiasm of a debt collector who finally found the right apartment. And here he is, the scarred elder with the red glowing eye, grinning like he invented suffering and holds the patent. What? A great energy source, no? The no is doing so much work, that's not a question, that's a verdict. Zeon's not a person to this man. He's a battery with anxiety and good reflexes. And the worst part? He's not even wrong. In Neo's soul's math, the awakened are gods, and everyone else is just the wiring. Clexi asks if being eaten by a sandworm felt like being in his mother's womb, which is either a genuine curiosity about near-death experiences or the most aggressive icebreaker in post-apocalyptic history. Zeon clarifies he came here to make money, not to discuss the emotional parallels between rebirth and digestion. Clexi gives a thumbs up and tells him to look over there, which is the furniture store equivalent of the treasure is in the other room. A crate lands, and then we see what he keeps in his collection. He tells Zeon he collected them with a quiet pride, then leans in close with that sly, weathered grin and drops the punchline. Also, your future. Zeon's climbing a rope, which is the visual metaphor the writer chose for desperately trying to escape the premise. But the coins are already changing hands. Clexy's philosophical speech about losers leaving nothing behind is really just an elaborate way of saying, you're trapped. Zeon grits his teeth, holds up the mana stone, and demands 10 soul, which is aggressively lowballed for something worth 300. Clexy explains that everything is scarce here, which is how you justify price gouging when your customer has no alternatives. Our man smirks and says he doesn't have that kind of money. This is where the negotiation pivots from commerce to threat assessment. Knives come out. The production design team went with aggressively 90s alleys for this negotiation. Zeon gets surrounded by a crowd of culinary professionals who moonlight as enforcers. He glances over his shoulder with that wide amber eye, and you can see the calculation happening behind the sweat beads. How many of these guys can I bury in sand before they reach me? Clexy asks the reasonable question, how does an old man like me do business in a mine like this? The answer becomes visible in the looming shadow behind Zeon. A fist slams into the ground with enough force to make the concrete tremble. Zeon, still bound, has the audacity to tell Clexy to calm down and asks if he really thinks he has that kind of money. This energy, this I am trapped and outnumbered and I am still negotiating energy, is why he's the protagonist. Clexy leans in with a masked, menacing expression. The old man offers an alternative payment plan. I'll allow you to pay me in some other way. Zeon's jawline tightens because he knows exactly what's coming next. Clexy calls out the mana stone in his pocket with a greedy accusation. Zeon tries to negotiate again. Can I pay you back later? Or, which is the most cursed offer in a world where debt is enforced by violence? The answer arrives as a punch that sends debris flying. Blood spatters across the panel, and the violence accelerates. A severed arm hits the floor. Zeon lies bleeding, shielding his face as an energy blast lights up the dim alley. This is the part where most protagonists would realize they're outmatched. But Zeon drives a counterstrike with a blazing gauntlet, leaping forward through flying debris. A wave of sand-like energy scatters the attackers. His amber eyes glow from behind the shadow of his mask, and for a split second, they remember what they're dealing with. A hand grips the back of Zeon's head, lifting his face into shadow. Clexy leans in over him. Hey! The chapter ends on the word fuck. Because that's the only appropriate response when you realize you just showed your hand to a veteran awakened. The monocle drops onto the table like a judge's gavel, and our boy Zeon watches that blue crystal get held up for inspection like it's a Pokemon card at a shady tournament. Clexy, the scarred elder behind the monocle, does the thing where old men in Manhwa pretend they can't see obvious value. Zeon lunges across the table with the desperation of someone who just checked their bank account after a Steam sale. 300 soul, minimum, and this geriatric scam artist opened with 100 like he's haggling at a garage sale for garden gnomes. The blonde guy in the corner, probably someone's nephew who got this job through nepotism, chimes in that everything here's valuable, which is exactly what a guy says when he's never had to choose between rent and ramen. Zeon's getting grabbed by the collar now, slammed down hard, and you can see his hand clutching fabric with the white-knuckle grip of someone who knows this is a rigged game, but still needs to play. And then Zeon smiles. Not the heroic smile. The smile that says, I have already calculated 17 ways to ruin your life, old man, and I'm picking the most poetic one. He demands his change like a man ordering a hit, which, given the blood still drying on his face, is not an idle metaphor. Also, he catches a pickpocket mid-grab because of course he does. Situational awareness is apparently a passive skill for this protagonist. Clexy, still leaning in with that menacing grin, tells him to pick one item from the junk room. The monocle glints with the particular malice of a man who knows exactly what he's doing. Pick just one from any of them. The classic role-playing game dialogue option where every choice is technically a trap, but you still have to choose. Zeon holds up some rusted mechanical nightmare and complains it's just trash. Which, the visual is giving abandoned gas station core. But Clexy's watching from the shadows with that knowing smirk, the one that says you're looking at the wrong inventory slot. Kid, somewhere in this chaos, a bearded man with a Bitcoin coin and a blowtorch is having his own moment. Because even post-apocalyptic junk dealers have diversified their portfolios. Zeon tries on a fake nose and mustache combo that makes him look like a Groucho Marx cosplayer who lost a bet, then immediately swaps to holding up some ornate glasses like he's auditioning for a steampunk visual novel. The man is speedrunning every disguise option in the character creator and finding them all wanting. Then he finds it, the hourglass. And the resignation on his face is doing so much heavy lifting. This is the expression of a man who knows he's settling, who has scanned every pixel of this junk room and concluded that entropy itself has better inventory management. He holds that dark vessel close like he's reading its item description and the flavor text is just lol. Clexy calls him out for being interested in useless stuff, and Zeon hits him with the most dismissive sure in Manhwa history. 2 syllables that contain multitudes of, I am going to remember this conversation when this item saves my life and you are not invited to the victory screen. Zeon turns his back on the whole operation and walks into the neon-streaked ruin of the city, which is giving major I am the protagonist, and this is my leaving scene's energy. The gray-haired man shielding his face from industrial smoke is basically the background non-player character who exists to remind you that everyone else in this world is having a worse time than the main cast. And then, delivered with the sweetest manic smile you've seen on a man who definitely has a revenge spreadsheet, Zeon says the line, Old Man Clexy, let's never see each other again. Clexy's parting wisdom lands like a curse in a bargain bin fantasy role-playing game. Let's never see each other again. Zeon, meanwhile, is already alone in a bare room, staring at sand swirling through his fingers like he's waiting for a tutorial prompt that will never come. He tilts his head back, eyes closed, doing that thing where you pretend to be calm while your internal monologue is just screaming. The hourglass sits nearby, its sand falling at roughly the speed of a loading screen for a game that came out in 2014. Then something happens. The pocket watch, the locket, no, the whatever. This starts doing things. Amber light, sand drifting upward against gravity like the physics engine just broke. Zeon's face in that reflected glass looks less chosen one and more. I did not read the item description before equipping. The deja vu hits him like a status effect he can't cleanse. He's seen this before, somehow, in a dream or a previous life, or maybe just a really aggressive ad. The room fills with random objects, clock, teddy bear, chessboard, like the set designer had a budget and a grudge. And suspended in glass, a hooded figure watches. Classic horror game environmental storytelling. 0 out of 10 would not loot. The door doesn't knock, it explodes inward with the subtlety of a mid-boss introduction. Park Manhwa, human-shaped migraine, fills the frame roaring about mines and crawling. This man has the emotional range of a raid boss and the negotiation skills to match. Zeon's sand particles swirl around his gauntlet like the game is begging him to press the ultimate button already. Do I, Park Manhwa, have to come all the way here to drag you back? Yes. Yes, you do. Because Zeon is currently doing the most aggressive version of passive resistance possible, standing there, amber eyes locked, practically daring this man to discover what happens when you threaten someone who can weaponize geology. The sand around his fist says everything his mouth doesn't. Shut! The fist comes down like a patch note nerfing fun itself. Shockwaves erupt. This is not a warning shot. This is a man who skipped the tutorial and went straight to killing the training dummy with his bare hands. Zeon's dodge timing needs to be frame perfect, or he's about to learn what respawn disabled means in this universe. The follow-up is pure unfiltered aggression with no cooldown management. How dare you talk back at me? Zeon blocks, barely, arms crossed in that universal pose of, I am technically defending, but mostly just surviving. The jagged speech bubbles alone could cut glass. This man beat his own son, probably. This man beats his alarm clock. This man beats traffic by driving through it. Park Manhwa finally pauses, not from mercy, but from the sheer exhaustion of being this angry for this long. Gee, got that. Stand up and just follow me. The stutter is doing so much work here. This is a man whose rage has overheated and needs to thermal throttle. Zeon stands, clutching his arm, facing the silhouette of a man who communicates exclusively in violence and volume. And then, the shift. The camera pushes in on Zeon's face, and something cold replaces the fear. What a nasty temper. Park Manhwa, I remember you. The delivery is flat, almost nostalgic, like he's filing a receipt. Then the teeth show, The snarl forms, and the promise drops, "I'll make sure to at least kill you. Not defeat, not beat, kill." The patch notes just got personal. The train waits in its tunnel like a mechanical hearse, steam curling around dented metal. Zeon boards with 2 other workers who have the hollow eyes of people who've already accepted their quest rewards in advance. The foreman stands irresolute, tired, already calculating overtime he won't live to spend. "Ah, yes," they say, because what else do you say when the plot railroads you literally? Someone adjusts a headset, gets interrupted mid-sentence. "You should explain that stuff to Nin," and then Zeon just interposes a wooden beam. Debris scatters. The gauntlet-wrapped wrist comes down, and that cracked clock-like emblem on his arm does something it definitely wasn't doing before. Sand-tinged power erupts. The game is changing the rules in real time and not bothering with the patch notes. The hulking man roars, the miner cowers, and Zeon, upside down now, because of course he is. Belt throws a knife while cursing an unseen foe with eyes glowing amber. The assignment comes down: send this brat to shaft number 972. The response is immediate, terrified. Shaft 972? But that place is still what? Still cursed? Still unfinished? Still hungry? The sentence dies because some horrors don't need completion. You. Understood. Let's get going. The voice is Zeon's, or someone wearing Zeon's resignation like a borrowed coat. He's already walking toward the shaft that swallowed over a dozen people without leaving a single injury report. Just absence, just silence, just the kind of missing person statistic that doesn't generate side quests because no one comes back to turn them in. The veteran miner looks up at Zeon with the kind of gratitude that only exists when someone else is taking your death sentence, and he says it out loud: "Thank you for going where no one else would." 2 workers are having the most casual conversation imaginable about the mine's amenities: gambling, prostitution, alcohol, drugs, like they're reviewing a resort on TripAdvisor instead of a death camp with pickaxes. Someone's hand grips something unseen with the confidence of a man who's already accepted his workers' comp payout will be in the form of, "We never found the body." The bearded shadow figure confirms what Zeon's about to learn. Nobody comes back injured from shaft 972 because nobody comes back at all. Zeon and another miner stand at the tunnel mouth like they're about to enter a haunted house attraction, except the only thing jumping out is existential annihilation and possibly a mana overdose. Our guy Zeon, amber eyes glowing with the optimism of someone who has not yet read the patch notes on this particular dungeon, figures he'll just grab some mana stones and be back for dinner. The other worker apologizes and thanks him in the same breath, the verbal equivalent of a eulogy and a resignation letter. The moment Zeon actually commits to this bad decision, the veteran miner starts screaming after him like he just watched someone walk into traffic, which, narratively speaking, he absolutely did. Arya, in her nurse cap and goggles, looks up with the wide-eyed shock of someone who just realized the protagonist's plot armor does not extend to making good life choices. Zeon swings his pickaxe with the rage of a man who just discovered his performance review was written by the Grim Reaper. All because he offended Park Manhwa, the middle management tyrant whose entire personality has a louder voice than you. The pickaxe handle snaps, which is the universe's way of saying wrong tool for this existential crisis. Buddy. Arya reaches desperately for something that's already gone, because in this story, the rescue comes after the fall, never before. Zeon looks up toward a light that is absolutely not the exit, his amber eyes catching the glow of a man who just realized the tutorial boss was the easy part. Zeon spreads his arms like he's addressing a crowd that isn't there, asking whether the others didn't notice because they were civilians, which is generous, because what he really means is, did everyone else just accept death this easily, or am I the only one who read the survival guide? Zeon looks up with the startled expression of someone who just felt the floor become a suggestion rather than a guarantee, the classic, "Oh, the ground was a loading screen" realization. A boot cracks the earth where solid ground used to be, and then the backworld opens its mouth, a crimson vortex spiraling open like the worst surprise party in cultivation history, complete with swirling debris and the distinct sensation that gravity just filed for retirement. Zeon's eye goes wide with the specific dilation of a man who has just processed that his side quest has been upgraded to main storyline boss arena without his consent. He lunges forward anyway, teeth bared, because the one thing you cannot nerf about this protagonist is his refusal to read the danger warnings. Something armored and orb-shaped slices into the ground with a blade-like motion, because apparently even the environment itself decided to get in on the action and spec into close combat. The dungeon equivalent of, we noticed you haven't died enough, so we patched in extra aggression. The ground in front of Zeon just got slashed open by something he didn't see coming, which is always a bad sign in any dungeon crawling experience. He stares at his own smoking fist like it's a defective controller that started overheating mid-boss fight, and the realization hits him that this is not, in fact, a dream he can wake up from. Somewhere in this hellscape, a bandaged figure hurls a knife at a gnarled tree like they're auditioning for a survival horror game where the trees are also enemies. Zeon is now fully conscious of the fact that even Neo Soul prepares before entering a dungeon, and he walked into this one via a mineshaft that doubles as a disposal chute for inconvenient people. He stares at his scarred, dirty hand like it's going to offer him a refund for this experience, which it absolutely will not. Our boy crouches low, gripping his boot, clenching his fist, doing the whole protagonist about to make a terrible decision body language checklist. He pulls a dark mask over his face against the cloudy red sky, because if you're going to die in a volcanic dungeon, you might as well look like you planned it. The environment reveals itself in full, jagged rock formations erupting with molten lava under a sky that looks like it filed a complaint with the atmosphere and lost. Zeon does the math that every survival protagonist eventually does. Staying here means suffocating on heat and ash, but moving means potentially finding an exit or a more creative death. He steps forward, boots on cracked stone, because the only thing worse than a bad plan is no plan at all. His amber eyes glow with that specific, I have sand powers and nothing left to lose. Energy, sand particles swirling around him like he's already auditioning for his future epithet. Orange embers rise from the ground at his feet, and the visual is doing a lot of heavy lifting for the "this kid is not normal" narrative. A massive wave of golden sand and fire surges upward in the cratered landscape, silhouetting our protagonist against what I can only describe as the most aggressive screensaver in cultivation history. Zeon collapses onto cracked orange ground with the exhausted relief of someone who just survived their own special attack, exhaling a few that carries approximately 12 layers of trauma. Then he spots the broken blade nearby, remembers where he actually is, and delivers the most honest two-word review of his situation possible. Fuck me. Zeon reaches out with a gloved hand, amber eyes blazing like someone who just remembered he has plot armor, and the universe responds with a sound effect that absolutely does not translate politely. He falls backward into a chasm because of course he does, clutching his head while lava does its best skincare routine on him, and then shouts that it ain't scary at all, the most transparent lie in Manhwa history. Our boy stands in the ruin with sand swirling like he's trying to summon a refund for this dungeon experience, then collapses face down on cracked earth in the universal pose of, I did not sign up for this difficulty spike. But give Zeon 5 seconds of oxygen debt and he roars into the rain that Park Manhwa is dead to him once he's out. Classic protagonist behavior, threatening middle management while actively dying. A clenched fist, a desolate slope, Zeon staring at molten lava like it's the terms of service he definitely didn't read before clicking I accept on this awakening. He tugs his sleeve loose with the energy of someone about to make a terrible decision confidently, then lunges forward in a gravity-defying stretch that screams, I have no plan, and that's the plan. And then he dives straight toward a gaping creature's mouth, not away from it, toward it, because this man watched too much shonen and decided the optimal strategy is, what if I just punch the problem? The ground cracks, white energy spines pierce the air, and Zeon crashes down with sand and golden particles exploding around him like he's doing a legendary drop emote in real life. But the real show is the colossal dragon-scale maw roaring to life behind him. Zeon hurls a cloth-wrapped bundle at the unseen foe while some other poor soul declares they can control ashes, which is like showing up to a gunfight with a leaf blower, but respect the hustle. The injured arm clenches, dark sands swirl, and Zeon stands at a cliff edge with his amber glow pulsing like a check engine light that absolutely will not be ignored. Then he tumbles backward into a cracked abyss because gravity remains unimpressed by protagonist energy. Pale, tired, lying on the ground with sand grains clinging to his brow like the universe's most abrasive glitter, and then the close-up hits, sweat beading, lips parted, I can't breathe, whispered like the most devastating status effect in the game. A concealed figure lies face down, a clenched fist cast in shadow, and Zeon kneels forward with amber eyes blazing, the "I'm not dead yet" pose that every shonen protagonist has copyrighted at this point. A boot kicks cracked red earth, shards fly, and Zeon lunges forward with golden sand swirling, but the real panel is the molten inferno erupting behind him, because this dungeon looked at his resolve and said, "Cute, now hold my beer." Zeon hovers, mid-air facing a colossal lava bronze dragon maw, fire framing his silhouette in the most unhinged David versus Goliath energy possible, eyes glowing amber, wind catching his hair, and a brutal strike tearing across his pale chest, because this boss does not respect the dramatic pause. A voice asks if it's Yama, the death god, and someone else screams that there's no way, which is exactly what you say right before it. Absolutely is him. As a cloaked figure crashes through flames with robes torn and desperate trajectory written all over him. Zeon launches through the air sword in hand as orange energies swirl, but the panel that matters is the old man with the broad, toothy grin, sun-worn face, bearded mouth curling with sly menace, looking like he just found his new favorite toy in this burning dumpster of a dungeon. And Zeon, mid-air among swirling sands and shadowed chaos, locks gazes downward as golden energy billows, not knowing yet that the white-haired terror grinning beneath him is about to become the reason he survives this hell, and also the reason he almost dies in it several more times. This panel is the moment the power scale of this entire story picks up the metaphorical chair and smashes it across the room. The old man with the white hair and the red eyes grins like he just found his new favorite punching bag, and his name is Deordan. Zeon's eye goes wide. That's not surprise. That's the look a mouse gives a hawk a millisecond before impact. A red energy blast tears through the cavern, and our boy is falling through a chasm before his brain finishes processing the input. The ground cracks open from the sheer force of whatever just landed. Debris explodes outward, and someone roars, and I do mean roars, with a fury that would make a raid boss reconsider its career choices. Zeon's thrown through the air like a rag doll, bandaged arms flailing. He lands clutching his head, amber eyes blazing with the universal question, "What the actual hell just hit me?" He looks up, still alive, still breathing, still utterly confused, and then the old man from before is standing over him, a silhouette of pure menace against the burning dungeon ceiling. Deordan grips his sword, red eye glowing like a warning light on a critical system failure. A foot steps forward onto the cracked stone. "What are you?" he asks, and it's not a polite inquiry. It's a loading screen before the boss fight. Zeon doesn't back down. He's too exhausted for that. "I asked," he starts, golden sand swirling around him, still trying to maintain some shred of protagonist pride. There's a brief moment where the sand catches the light and Zeon almost looks like he has a plan, but then the cloaked figure behind him steps into view, and the warmth drains out of the scene like it never existed. 2. The countdown is real. Zeon's eye widens again, he's doing the math, and the answer is, I'm cooked. Deordan looms over him, every inch the final boss of a game our boy did not opt into. What? Can't you talk? Deordan raises his sword, the embers framing him like a villain album cover, then the words that freeze Zeon's blood, then die. Oh. The armored warrior actually pauses, and in that half-second window, Zeon lunges forward, teeth bared, screaming his own name like it's a divine summoning spell. "Zeon! My name is Zeon!" Deordan's response is immediate and brutal. "Zeon? What an idiotic name. He doesn't miss a beat. This man has been roasting people since before Zeon was born. Who do you think you are, making fun of someone's name?" Our boy fires back, but the comedic timing is not on his side. Zeon unleashes a red-orange beam of energy, his fire gauntlet doing the heavy lifting for the disguise, but Deordan doesn't even flinch. He just stands there, red eye locked on, and says, "Deordan," as if that's all the introduction he needs. "My name is Deordan." The grin that follows is the kind a cat gives a mouse. It hasn't decided if it wants to eat yet. But the important thing is, the old man has a name now, and our protagonist has just unlocked a tutorial boss who doesn't pull punches. "What do you think I'm doing? Calling my name idiotic? And why do you keep?" Zeon's rage finally boils over into the most disrespectful comeback he can manage. "Hey, dumbass. Respect where it's due. He has guts, if not survival instincts." Deordan kneels, claw gauntlet stretching forward. The man is literally reaching out to teach, even while being insulted. I can't believe the disrespect. What even is that? It's a snare. And then, because he's still a petty old man, he adds, damn it. Park Manhwa, that son of a bitch, as if that explains everything. Stop calling me a dumbass. Zeon points at the towering swordsman, dust raining around them, and it's genuinely impressive how little this old man cares about teenage sass. Deordan grabs Zeon by the jaw. What are you doing? And forces his head upward. Don't think of it as seeing with your eyes, but with mana. Zeon's eye ignites with golden light, and the first real lesson begins. This is the moment the mentor becomes a teacher. Feel the mana. A colossal orb hovers above the fissured ground, the snare made visible, and then Zeon sees it, a hand of sand and crystal thrusting upward from the earth. You finally see it, Deordan whispers, and for the first time, our boy understands the scale of what he's been missing. Zeon stands ready, confronting the molten chaos, weapons drawn, sand swirling. Behind him, the cloaked figure watches, sword on his back, cape billowing. The lesson has been given, now comes the application. Zeon charges forward, sand-scarred aura blazing, fire gauntlet clenched, eyes narrowed, sweat on his brow. He's going to prove himself. The silver-haired warrior on the ground lunges upward, chained blade spanning the rocky floor, and for a split second, the dungeon holds its breath. The wind-swept, long-haired elder stands in the ember-lit haze, face weathered and determined. He's not here to kill the kid. He's here to find out if the kid is worth the effort. And by the look in those red eyes, the answer might surprise him. Zeon, still reeling from having his eardrums ruptured by a casual display of force, demands to know who this white-haired disaster is and what kind of power scale we're even operating on anymore. The man doesn't answer. He just looks back with the energy of someone who considers polite conversation a debuff he'd rather not equip. Deordan finally speaks, and his answer is somehow worse than silence. This entire volcanic death trap is his hunting ground, which he says with the same enthusiasm someone else might reserve for my favorite coffee shop. Before Zeon can process the implications of being trapped in someone's personal safari zone, Deordan deploys what I can only describe as a skill name that sounds like a rejected Pokemon cry, Crayon! And the entire cavern architecture files for divorce from gravity. Molten rock, shockwaves, the whole aesthetic of your eardrums were merely the opening act. Zeon clutches his head like he's trying to keep his brain from leaking out through his nose, and honestly, valid. We've gone from survive the mine to survive the guy who hunts in the mine for fun in about 12 seconds of narrative time. But Deordan isn't done testing his new acquaintance. He grabs Zeon by the shoulders and yeets him toward a swarm of fiery bird monsters that look like they evolved specifically to make survive on your own a statistical impossibility. Zeon's face says, what we're all thinking. This mentorship program needs better hours oversight. The birds descend with that specific energy of GRP mobs that exist to teach you the dodge button, and Zeon, still half-deaf, fully confused, and now on fire adjacent, looks up at a demonic face emerging from the swarm like what in the world is both question and prayer. His sand aura flares instinctively, which is the first time we've seen it react without conscious input, and that's either a survival mechanism or his magic filing a complaint with upper management. Deordan, meanwhile, has transformed from guy who almost killed me to guy who is definitely going to watch me die. He shouts something about being useful and surviving on your own, which is rich coming from someone whose entire personality is, I hunt alone in a volcano. The red eyes, the claw gauntlet, the absolute lack of protective instinct. This is not a teacher. This is a raid boss who decided player development was more entertaining than player elimination. The aftermath of Deordan's latest contribution to Zeon's trauma budget is a field of blurred red energy, and Zeon's genuinely impressive ability to keep standing while his nervous system files multiple grievances. That crazy grandpa, he mutters, and that's the moment. That's the exact frame where Zeon graduates from victim of circumstance to protagonist who recognizes the absurdity of his own plot. The birds aren't the tutorial, Deordan is. And the final exam is, don't die while the teacher watches. The old man tells him to increase the purity of his mana, and for the first time, Zeon's eye glows not with rage, but with actual understanding. doesn't mean the lesson sticks immediately. He's still lying in volcanic ash, bleeding through bandages, screaming obscenities at the concept of winged pain. He throws a punch that would fold a normal man's skeleton, but the bird dodges like it's been studying his tells. His boot lands on cracked earth, and the energy lines say the same thing, not fast enough. "Why does it keep biting my left side?" he roars, unleashing a sand-powered slash that carves through the embers. The bird is already somewhere else. A firestorm explodes with the silhouette lunging through it. He throws his arm up to block a red slash, screams in frustration, and staggers back with wide amber eyes. The panic is finally showing. He's suspended midair, curled like a defensive animal, while jagged white light crashes around him like nature's worst lighting director. The silver-haired figure crashes through the ruins with a blade that looks more like a statement than a weapon. Zeon looks up, stunned. "What's that?" Deordan shouts something back, but Zeon's ears are still ringing from the sonic bloom. He can't hear a word, just the old man's angry silhouette standing in a rain-soaked chamber. The birds swarm through burning architecture like they're staging an aerial coup. Zeon plants his feet, arms raised, and unleashes a surge of sand energy into the inferno. He collapses, bloodied forearms hanging, and Deordan's voice cuts through. "Gather mana in your eyes and look at me." The training hasn't stopped, it's finally starting. A red-tinged blast erupts below him. From the flames, a raven-headed entity dives, its silhouette cutting the air like a scythe made of spite. Zeon's world is about to be reclassified as a nightmare. He charges through a whirl of shattered debris, amber glow flickering at the edge of his vision. A torrent of sand and fire erupts from his gauntlet, and he keeps pushing, because stopping means death. He lunges forward in a flame-wreathed sprint, screaming through shattered wood and embers. Then he plants himself in the middle of a volcanic battlefield, arms raised, ready to face whatever the dungeon throws next. A warrior in a flowing coat charges along a blazing trajectory, spear-like blade tearing through air. Golden sand erupts at the point of impact. Then a lone figure plummets through a chasm of floating rock, and the dungeon's true boss announces itself. Zeon charges one last time, fist clenched with red energy trailing behind him, eyes burning with feral amber light. The student is finally ready to see what his teacher has been fighting all along. Zeon laughs like a man who just survived something he absolutely should not have survived. That mouthful of "right" is pure survival euphoria. Then the reality check hits, the ground shakes, the air shifts, and his expression drops into something that looks a lot like, "Oh no." Deordan, the man who has seen more dungeon boss fights than Zeon has had hot meals, calmly identifies the source. That was a roar from the boss. Zeon's brain short-circuits. "Did you just say, boss?" And then the Crimson Drake makes its entrance, an armored horror wreathed in blue and orange energy, slamming a claw into the ground hard enough to crack the lava beneath it. Zeon asks the obvious question, "That's not a dragon." And Deordan, with the casual confidence of a man who has fought actual dragons, says, "No, but it's probably at least B rank." The Drake unleashes a force field, a shimmering blue wall that makes even Deordan pause. "Force field! Fa!" And then the old man delivers the commentary, a magic-type trait. A jagged ice shard erupts from the monster's maw, because of course this fire-themed dungeon has a boss that can also freeze you solid. The blue force field is its signature ability. The game just told us the raid boss has its own unique mechanics. Zeon watches Deordan step into the glowing fissure, pale blue aura surging around him, and the kid's reaction is immediate and sincere. "That's overpowered!" Deordan soars through the shattered cavern, arms wide, dark energy crackling around him like he's the main character of his own arc. And that's exactly what he is right now, a B-rank hunter showing an F-rank boy what the ceiling looks like. The fight goes fast. Sand and fire explode from the gauntlet as Zeon tries to keep up, but this isn't his battle. He's a spectator in the audience watching a masterclass in violence. A monstrous clawed hand slashes through the air, ice shards trailing, and Deordan meets it head-on, blade against armored scale, light and debris filling every panel. This is the part where the tutorial boss stops pulling punches. Deordan emerges through the explosion with a bloody grin, still smiling, because this man is insane in the best possible way. Zeon's eyes go wide as he watches the old man tear through the Drake's defenses like they're wet paper. The Drake roars, Deordan laughs, "Gahaha!" and then delivers a final slash that sends blue energy and shards of ice scattering across the cavern floor. The boss is down. The student just witnessed a lesson in real power. But Zeon isn't done. He charges forward with his fire gauntlet blazing, sand swirling around him, because the kid has a death wish and zero sense of self-preservation. "Fuck! I'm going to die today!" he screams, and that's the most honest self-assessment he's made all chapter. He lunges, blade meets claw, dark tendrils whip around, and he gets thrown back like a rag doll, skidding across the debris with a pained kayak! This is what it looks like when an F-rank tries to take on a B-rank monster solo. Deordan roars, bloodied and feral, claw raised, but Zeon is already airborne, caught in the shockwave of the Drake's final counterattack. He plummets through a collapsing cavern, embers trailing behind him like falling stars. He lands hard in a crater, red energy still venting from the impact, fists clenched, teeth gritted, refusing to stay down even though every bone in his body is screaming. This is the moment where survival instinct becomes character. "Fuck," he mutters, shirt torn, standing in the middle of a battlefield that looks like a god sneezed on it. The Drake's body is somewhere behind him. He doesn't even know if it's dead. All he knows is that he survived. But the dungeon isn't done with him yet. A shadowed figure delivers a kick that sends him flying across the cavern, limbs splayed, back arched, mid-fall against a fiery backdrop. The boss fight might be over, but the survival exam is still in session. Zeon collapses onto the sand, blood at the corner of his mouth, amber eyes still glowing with that stubborn refusal to die. And in the darkness above him, a massive scaled creature lunges, jaws open, ice energy crackling, because this world doesn't let you catch your breath. Deordan lands the final blow on the Drake and immediately starts running his mouth. Even a boss rank monster can't handle a real fight. The old man's having the time of his life while the entire cavern shakes from the impact. Zeon, meanwhile, is still processing the fact that he survived something that should have turned him into a smear on the cavern floor. His amber eyes are locked, teeth gritted. He's not dead yet, but his dignity is in critical condition. Deordan flexes his red aura like a power-up from a fighting game, the claw gauntlet glowing, a mocking laugh echoing through the debris. This man is a walking natural disaster wrapped in tattered cloth. Zeon peeks over the edge of a crater and sees the old man standing over the Drake's corpse, sword still planted in the ground like a victory flag. Even he has to admit that was impressive, and Zeon hates admitting things. Deordan's response to Zeon crawling out alive is the most affectionate insult possible. "Oh, idiot, you survived? Great! Now you owe me more training." The old man has a weird way of showing care. Zeon, face down in the dust, groans, "Yes, well, I did almost die." The man is running on pure spite and adrenaline at this point, and the spite is doing the heavy lifting. He gasps that he's honestly just too stubborn to die, which is the most Zeon thing anyone could say. If persistence were a stat, he'd be maxed out before the tutorial. But Deordan cuts the celebration short. The boss is dead, which means the dungeon is about to collapse. They have about 30 seconds to evacuate before they become permanent residents of the rubble. Zeon's wide amber eyes say everything. "I just survived a Drake, and now the dungeon wants to bury me alive. Perfect. The universe has a sense of humor, and it's targeting him specifically." Deordan grabs Zeon and they bolt, the old man laughing like a madman while Zeon gets hurled through a vortex mid-sprint. Apparently, life or death sprints are Deordan's idea of cardio. They burst out of a swirling red rift into the desert, Zeon landing flat on his back, sand in every orifice, looking like he just got spit out by the planet itself. Zeon crawls out of the collapsing exit, still coughing up sand, and sees Deordan already standing there like he just stepped off a bus. Not a scratch on him. Must be nice. Deordan points a scarred finger toward the horizon. "If you go that way, you'll reach Seoul." He's giving Zeon an out, a way back to the easy life, back to pretending to be just another nobody. But Zeon doesn't take the out. He asks, "Follow you? For how long?" Already hooked, the kid who had nothing to lose just found something worth chasing. Deordan's answer is brutally honest. "I don't know. No promises, no timeline, no sugarcoating. Just the raw weight of a man who's been walking this path alone for decades." He gives Zeon a final ultimatum, standing over him like a dark angel. "Now, choose." The easy road back to Seoul with its walls and lies, or the hard road into the unknown with a scarred old man? The lone boy against the orange sky. He's already made his choice, even if he doesn't know it yet. Let's see what happens when the desert finally wakes up. Zeon stares at his mentor with the kind of doubt reserved for conspiracy theories. Daeordan just grins with those glowing red eyes and says, "Exactly that." The old man turns and shouts over his shoulder, "Follow me, dumbass, we have a long way to go." And Zeon, because he has absolutely zero self-preservation instincts, follows. 6 hours later, Zeon is a puddle of sweat screaming at the sky. The sun has moved, the clouds have swirled, and our boy has not adapted. Even Arya, the young nurse who somehow got roped into this desert death march, is looking worried. She's saying, "It's already been 6 hours." Meanwhile, Daeordan just walks away like he's taken a Sunday stroll. Zeon screams, "Are you a teenager?" because his mentor's stamina is frankly insulting. But then his eye glows amber, and sand particles start spinning around his face. The system is booting up another lesson. Daeordan plants his giant sword in the sand and delivers the tutorial prompt. You can control sand, so it's pathetic that you can't even walk on it. Zeon tilts his head back and screams in a way that suggests his soul is leaving his body. Daeordan turns, red eyes blazing, and snarls something about rank. A cloaked figure with sharp teeth whispers, "Not some high-rank awakener like you." The gap between them is measured in experience, not power. Zeon's silhouette glows, sand swirling around his cloak, and he roars back, "So what if you're F rank or S rank?" If you've ever had someone tell you your starting level defines your entire run, drop skill issues in the comments. His eyes are glowing amber as a gauntleted hand grabs his collar. He shouts, "No one's born S rank." The old man bellows back. Others would say, "You're blessed enough too." Daeordan's scarred face looms over the frame, and he finally delivers the lecture, "Stop whining and think about how to use your power." There it is, the secret boss tutorial. A clenched fist against the amber sky. Daeordan grips Zeon's shoulder from behind, steadying him like a master forcing a blade into a student's hand. It's your power. Zeon yanks a strap on his coat, dark energy swirling around his arm. The old man twists him back, kicking up sand. It's not a conversation, it's a crash course in applied violence. Zeon recoils, clutching his shoulder, teeth gritted. Fuck, that really hurts. Then he mutters to himself, "I'm a dumbass? Do I need to increase my mental limits?" The self-awareness is real, but the pain is realer. Zeon stands amidst swirling sand and shards, a lone figure in the desert. The unnamed fighter behind him says, "It could be better, but it's possible." That's the whole vibe of this training arc, progress by inches. The boot arcs forward in a dramatic stride, kicking up dust. It's higher than my ankles. Zeon is literally baby-stepping his way to sand mastery. The old man watches without a word. Zeon admits the problem. It's using too much mana, not good enough long-term. But then he focuses mana on his legs, and suddenly, oh, that's so much better. The system user interface says, buff acquired. Zeon crashes backward as sand erupts, but the cloaked elder mutters something about his raw power and mana control being close to E rank. The gap is closing. The tutorial is working. Then Zeon crouches, golden sand swirling around him, and yells, "Oh, it's working!" A towering boot steps forward in the background. Daeordan's approval is silent but present. Zeon roars, "If I control the mana touching my feet, walking's so much easier." Then he turns with a wild grin, middle finger raised. "I'm so comfortable right now." "What? A shame for you, old man." He just flipped off his 100-year-old combat mentor and got away with it. If that doesn't scream main character energy, I don't know what does. This is the moment Zeon stops being the student and starts being the problem. "You kept calling me a dumbass, now I'm an idiot too?" That's not a question, that's a warning. Not long before that, Zeon is flat on his back in the sand, catching his breath while Daeordan sits nearby staring at an unconscious figure. The old man starts reminiscing about a time when being weak didn't mean being dead. Daeordan stands over him and basically says, "Get up or die, right here, your choice." Zeon doesn't even need to think about it, he's not the quitting type. Zeon grins with that classic, "I just figured something out." Energy, complains the old man could have explained earlier, and starts walking alongside him like they're on a desert road trip. A sneeze echoes through the canyon because even protagonists get allergies, and then we see Zeon sitting on the ground, bandaged arms trembling, gritting his teeth as Deordan prepares to strike him with a weapon. Deordan approves the spot for whatever he's about to do. Zeon looks up with, "That is this man insane" expression, because that's the same look we all have when our mentor is about to break us. Deordan roars about water, because in this desert, water is the real currency, and Zeon mutters, "Ugh, not again," as something clearly goes sideways. The man's training method is basically, survive this, and you'll be stronger. Then the desert shifts. Zeon feels a vibration in the ground, that unmistakable something massive is coming signal. He whispers, "This vibration, and there's more than one," as the environment turns hostile. The great horned hyenas emerge, nocturnal creatures that should be sleeping, but something woke them up. They advance with glowing red eyes and bared fangs, and the message is clear: you are the morning snack. One of them taunts him, "Hey dumbass, think you can survive on your own?" while a towering cloaked fighter appears behind it. Zeon gets knocked back hard, but his amber eyes are already glowing with intent. Hyenas clash in a blur of teeth and fury. Zeon responds with a gesture that says everything, a cocky thumb point that means you're next. The sand around him starts to rise. Zeon draws his sword and stands alone against the swarm. Sand swirls around his outstretched hand, and then he charges forward in a burst of golden light, the fire gauntlet blazing as he closes the distance. He slides low, sweeping his blade to fend off multiple attackers at once. For a split second, his eyes glow with something deeper, the weight of his training finally clicking into place. The hyenas press harder, and Zeon unleashes a defensive burst of sand. Golden energy erupts around him. He roars, "Ha, you crazy bastards! Damn it, just how many are they?" But even his mana has limits. He clutches his chest, feeling the drain. "Before I get bitten to death, I'm gonna die from mana loss first." A plan. A golden sand swirl forms over his chest as he concentrates. He tells himself to think hard, and in that moment of clarity, he extends a hand forward, sand gathering in response to his will. The fire gauntlet may be a disguise, but the sand is real. He slams his fist into the nearest beast with a cry of, "You cowardly son of a bitch!" And for the first time in this fight, he's not reacting. He's acting. The hyenas keep coming, and Deordan's over here laughing about how efficiently you can punch a hole in a skull. Meanwhile, Zeon is mid-kneel, surrounded by glowing red eyes, reciting his mana management tutorial like it's a prayer. Deordan's voice cuts through the chaos. "Adjust to your opponent. Use the minimum killing force. The minimum mana. Basically, the awakened version of work smarter, not harder." And Zeon actually listens, lunging forward with both hands out, shouting fight efficiently like he's leading a corporate training seminar. Then Zeon's eyes glow amber and golden sand swirls around his torso. The system must have just panned down to his mana gauge and seen he actually has level ground to stand on now. A hyena the size of a small car lunges in extreme close-up. Deordan answers with a claw gauntlet to the face and a mocking laugh that says, "I have been doing this since before your species evolved to stand upright." That grin is pure malice. The old man is having the time of his life, and the hyenas are the entertainment. Zeon tries to shout a warning, "Wait the grandpas!" But Deordan is already mid-roar, declaring that everything in this clearing will be slaughtered here. The hyena pack surges forward in a blur of red energy and motion lines. Zeon joins the fray, fire gauntlet forward, amber eyes locked, and he's actually landing hits now. The training is paying off, even if the collateral damage to his street cred as a fire mage is mounting. A pair of boots stands amid a carpet of dead hyenas. The soundtrack should just cut to silence here. Deordan and Zeon have cleared the room. But Zeon isn't celebrating. He's looking up at the stormy sky with genuine concern, which in Manhwa language means we're about to learn that this was just wave 1. A horned beast with glowing blue eyes emerges from the sandstorm. Deordan faces it down, red cape whipping, while Zeon is still mentally calculating his mana to danger ratio. Then Deordan's eyes go wide. He senses a force field. That's the Manhwa equivalent of a boss music sting, and Zeon is not emotionally prepared for this encore. Deordan lunges forward, darkness swirling around him, and Zeon counters with an ice-blue energy burst between clenched fingers. Whatever this force field is, they're going to crack it open like a loot box. The young man is confused. But the armored figure is already tense, energy crackling. Deordan roars, lightning surging from his aged frame, and Zeon matches him with a full sand-powered charge. Zeon lunges with a grin that says he's found the rhythm. The sand swirls around his hands, and for a split second he looks less like a cornered survivor and more like a mage who actually knows what he's doing. The dust settles. Deordan asks if they're leaving, and Zeon gets a grunt of acknowledgement. "Oh, you're alive, idiot!" High praise from a mentor whose baseline communication style is a rusty sword to the face. Zeon stands in a wolf hood, sword raised, looking like he's about to drop the most dramatic album of the post-apocalyptic era. Deordan tells him it's a dagger, because of course Gramps has zero patience for dramatic posing. Deordan holds up a piece of hyena meat on a spear, explaining that the muscles are highly toxic and you'll die if you consume them. So naturally, Zeon is going to eat it anyway, because that is the kind of life choices our protagonist makes. Dawn breaks over the wasteland, and Zeon is happily chewing on something, musical notes floating around him like he just discovered the desert's answer to bubblegum. The world has moved on from life-threatening combat to casual snacking in about 12 seconds flat. Zeon throws a triumphant punch into the air, haha, and it's the first genuine, I'm having fun energy we've seen from him since the sandworm tried to make him an appetizer. The kid is learning, and even he can feel it. But the mood shifts when a cloaked figure looms over Zeon's exhausted frame on the dusty ground. The man with long white hair and a sword, Deordan's demeanor turns grim. This isn't a hyena. This is something that's been tracking them. Zeon mutters something about humidity, and you can see the confusion in his eyes, because the air shouldn't feel this wet in the middle of a desert. But Deordan's expression says he knows exactly what it means. The elder stands silhouetted against the fiery desert, sword strapped to his back. A revelation echoes across the dunes. The Scarlet Sand Guild's fighters were never random mooks. They have names, and those names were earned in blood. And Zeon just made a lot of dangerous people very angry. They crest the dune, and the world opens into a shimmering pocket of blue. Zeon's pointing like he just discovered fire, because in this desert, water is basically the same thing. He's already lunging forward, fire gauntlet raised and sand swirling at his boots. Arya falls along the cliff edge, because apparently no one in this party knows how to walk steadily toward anything. He hits the water and just floats, eyes closed, golden light bleeding through like he's unlocked a secret meditation achievement. Deordan mutters something about him being a dumbass, standard operating procedure. But then his eye snaps open, amber gold glowing in a way that says, the tutorial just got a patch note. He's feeling drowsy, dizzy, and that's not relaxation. That's the system flagging a status effect. A flashback cuts in, a voice screaming, "You shithead!" and Deordan's silhouette mid-swing. The old man's training methods are less gentle guidance and more aggressive combat flashbacks baked into the water supply. He snaps back to the oasis, and there's a chain blade swinging toward his face. A cloaked figure is already mid-attack, because of course the first water in 1,000 miles has a respawn point camped by a boss mob. A spiked worm creature with a single glowing eye erupts from the sand. Deordan's blade carves across its body because when you're being attacked by a Fulgor, you skip the diplomacy's option and go straight to executive action. Zeon scrambles to his feet, sand gathering around his hand. He fires the fire gauntlet, a bright blast that buys him a second, but the real power is already coiling beneath the dunes. The hidden sand is his main, the fire is just the taunt. The elder, white hair streaming in the wind, explains that the Fulgor uses a light on its forehead to lure prey. Classic shiny thing death mechanic. Zeon's already seen that boss pattern in about 12 RPGs, so he's not impressed. Zeon lunges again, this time with sand pouring off his right arm like liquid obsidian. The Fulgor tries to parry, but he's already inside its guard, fist connecting with a crack that echoes across the water. The creature collapses into the shallows. Zeon stands over it, chest heaving, sand slowly settling around his boots. The elder tells him to skin it because apparently in this economy, monster parts are the new gold standard. But the fight's not over. A massive spiked back rises from the water. The real threat was hiding under the surface. The elder's voice cuts through. Is your left brain petrified, or is your right brain degenerating? A motivational speech you don't hear every day. Zeon grips a blade, sand energy bleeding into the steel. He charges, gritting his teeth against the shock. The thing swipes, but he's already under it, and when he rises, the blade is buried in its underbelly. The fire gauntlet flares once, just for show. The monster collapses. Silence settles over the oasis, broken only by Zeon's ragged breathing. He's used sand in front of witnesses, and the secret's a little more cracked now, but the elder just nods, and that nod means, welcome to the real fights. The elder mentions that this Fulgor is just a scout, a taste of what's coming from the deeper desert. Somewhere beyond the horizon, the Scarlet Sand Guild is already moving. Their champions have names too, and Zeon will learn every one of them the hard way. Zeon runs a thumb along the fire gauntlet's edge. He's got a disguise, a growing skill set, and a mentor who expresses affection through barely veiled threats. If the guild wants a fight, they'll find out exactly why the desert has a new apex predator. Arya finishes the cloak with the energy of someone who just beat the final boss of a crafting quest, and Daorden immediately kills the mood by calling enough nonsense. The man's celebration protocols are broken. He holds out a vial of Fulgorge's gall, which is apparently precious medicine, and tells Zeon to stuff it in and not leave a single gram. The tone is less, take your vitamins, and more, eat this or I'll make you eat this. Zeon complies, and within seconds every cell in his body is screaming in revolt. The gall hits his bloodstream like a magma injection, and sand erupts around him as he writhes. Not training, this is biological warfare. The monocle elder's response to Zeon's agony is a deadpan bear with it, dumbass. The bedside manner in this party is a war crime, but the medicine is working. Zeon's mana is thickening. Daorden sends him flying across the desert floor and laughs. Zeon spits sand and shouts, "You scared me!" Zeon gets back up, fist extended, sand and light erupting behind him. Determination is the only currency he has left, and he's spending it on the old man's approval, whether he admits it or not. The monocle elder raises his fist and bellows at an unseen opponent. Even the old men in this desert are having midlife crises that look like last stands. They walk without rest for 2 weeks. No food, no sleep, just desert, monsters, and Daorden's mood, which is the least renewable resource in any ecosystem. And then the sand-scarred spider appears. Glowing red eyes, mandibles wide enough to swallow a man, and the kind of presence that makes you reevaluate every life choice that led you here. Zeon doesn't flinch. He stares it down and says, "If you're coming at me, be quick." 2 weeks of walking with Gramps has burned the fear out of him and replaced it with something sharper. He charges with a sound that comes from somewhere deeper than his lungs, "Kaik!" and sand explodes around him like a breaking wave. The spider has the audacity to exist in his desert, and that is not a crime he will tolerate. The creature's silhouette shatters against the golden haze, and Zeon emerges from the dust, breathing hard, cloak torn, hands still shaking. He just killed something else. The count is mounting faster than his conscience can absorb it. One of the elders watches from the ridge, hood pulled low, and mutters, "With my power, it feels like a cool breeze." Zeon is still figuring out what the ceiling even is, and that's the scariest part of watching him grow. The white-haired figure hasn't spoken in days. That's not silence, that's the sound of a soul trying to figure out what it just became. Sand swirls around his boots like the desert itself is waiting for an answer. Zeon finally breaks the quiet with a question any of us would ask after 2 weeks of walking through hell. How much longer do we have to walk? Then his head snaps around because something is moving beneath the sand. A segmented nightmare with too many eyes bursts out like the desert decided to cough up its worst idea. His wrist-mounted display lights up with red wireframe markers. These guys are serious. The swarm projection hovers like a tactical map from a wargame, and Zeon plants a stance, one hand raised, and says, the kind of line that makes Gramps proud, "If you're coming at me, be quick." The swarm doesn't care about duels. They lunge with scythe limbs and glowing red cores, a coordinated wave of hunger. Zeon's goggles catch the light as he looks up at them descending, and then a voice from behind. Daorden, calm as ever, says, "Good boy." Way to listen. The compliment feels more like a test than a reward. Golden sand erupts in a shockwave as Zeon releases the hold on his power. The air turns into a blizzard of particles, each grain a sharp edge, and for a moment the swarm reels. But the desert doesn't care about moments, it cares about survival. Zeon charges through the dust cloud, fist clenched, eyes locked on the nearest creature. His detection range is 10 meters. He can feel every grain of sand within that circle, every twitch of insect leg. The swarm closes in, and he knows he has to find high ground before they surround him completely. A shadow descends over the battlefield. A red energy lattice burns across the sky as the real creatures arrive. Zeon's voice cracks as he shouts, "Old man! There are too many of them!" He doesn't know if he's calling for help or just screaming into the void. The void doesn't answer. But the old man does. And then something shifts in Zeon's eyes. No! How long am I going to keep whining for the old man like a kid? He screams it into the wind, tears mixing with sand, and the air explodes with golden energy. The spider things surge forward, but this time he doesn't back up. He goes straight through them. He sprints forward with a manic grin, teeth bared, wind tearing at his coat. Sand pours off his hand like a waterfall as he unleashes a blast that blinds the nearest creature. The fight becomes a blur of motion, duck, pivot, strike, scream. He's not thinking anymore, just reacting, and that's when he's most dangerous. A scythe limb catches him midair. He's tackled to the ground with a thud that knocks every thought out of his skull. More of them pile on, claws raking, and he can't find his footing. From somewhere above, Deordan watches. He doesn't help. That's the lesson. Zeon shoves the weight off and roars at the sky. Ganging up on me like this? You guys have no shame. Take me on one-on-one. It's the kind of line that would get you laughed out of a fight club, but he means it. The rider on the giant spider mount just stares back, and Zeon knows he's not getting out of this with a fair fight. He throws his hand forward and a stream of sand propels him into the air like a missile. The golden blast shatters the ground where he was standing, and now he's above them, scanning for an opening. His voice is hoarse but steady. First, I need to get to high ground and assess the situation. The tactical mind is kicking back in. But the swarm isn't the real threat. A colossal, sand-burrowing creature rises from the dunes behind him, its segmented legs blocking out the sun. Zeon lands on a ridge, fire gauntlet glowing, and faces it, palm raised, teeth clenched. The desert is about to see what happens when a sand mage stops holding back. The clash leaves a crater. When the dust settles, Zeon is on his knees, blood pooling beneath him in the sand. One of the creatures looms over him, red eyes boring into his skull. He can hear his own heartbeat drowning out the wind. And then Deordan's voice cuts through like a blade. You might already be swelling with ambition, thinking of returning to Neo's soul. Zeon lifts his head. There's blood on his teeth, but he's grinning. A feral, exhausted grin that says he heard every word and filed it under things I'll prove wrong. The silver-haired figure behind him, Pabilsa maybe, or some other elder, rises with a golden aura. But Zeon's focus is locked on Gramps, who leans in with a predatory smile. Not even realizing you might be the finest prey, Deordan whispers, his red eye gleaming in the half-light. The sand settles. The battle is over. But the real test is only beginning. And Zeon's about to learn that the deadliest thing in the desert isn't the monsters. It's the man who trained him. The swirling mass of sand and energy that kicked up when Deordan finished his speech hasn't even settled, and already the desert is reminding you exactly who runs this place. A massive sand centipede with more legs than your last K-pop choreo bursts through the canyon, and Zeon realizes the warm-up round is officially over. He plants his feet, golden sand swirling around his fists like a second heartbeat, because the only thing worse than facing a B-rank monster is doing it after you've already bled out half your mana pool. The centipede's jaws snap, feathers and chitin exploding outward, and our boy barely ducks under the first strike, teeth clenched hard enough to crack enamel. Right, he mutters, sand answering his call like a trained choreography. You can't lose against those monsters, don't you think? Then the ants show up. Glowing red eyes, segmented bodies, crawling across the sand like they own the entire damn apocalypse. And the real problem begins. Zeon's grin turns feral, the kind of grin that says, I've accepted the cardio is awful, but the loot better be worth it, and he charges into the swarm like a madman. He roars, unleashing a wall of sand that catches a dozen of them mid-charge, but more keep coming from the nest under his feet, an endless supply of bad news. "This will end all of you," he screams, raw mana surging as the fire gauntlet flares, a desperate rally against an endless tide that refuses to break. Deordan watches from a rocky ledge, arms crossed, smirking like this is the highlight of his entire century. The old man is enjoying the show a little too much. But Zeon's control is slipping. The mana he's been hoarding since the egg incident is tearing through his channels like a bad JIP demo, energetic, chaotic, and increasingly hard to keep on beat. At this rate, I'll be devoured and I'll die. The thought cuts through the adrenaline, cold and certain, and for a second he's not a sand mage, just a scared kid in the desert. A larva-like claw erupts from the ground, pinning his arm with a wet crack, and for a moment the world is just pain and the smell of chitin. He shoves it off with a last burst of sand, stumbling backward, one hand clutching his bleeding side, the other already raised for the next shot. The ants swarm closer. The centipede regenerates in the background. This is not a good timeline for anyone who isn't a bug. Zeon looks down at the hourglass ticking in his coat pocket, the one that never seems to run out of sand, and something clicks behind his amber eyes. "Ah, I guess it's over." His voice is flat, but his eyes are narrowing with something that isn't surrender. It's the look of a man who just found the exploit in the game system. He drives his fist into the ground, creating a crater that sends sand and shell fragments flying, buying himself 3 seconds of breathing room. The image of Park Maho flashes through his mind, of Neo's soul, of every coward who ever told him he was garbage, and for the first time today, the rage doesn't feel like a weakness. "Even when my life is flashing before my eyes, not a single good memory comes to mind." He laughs, a broken, maniacal sound, and stands up. The desert still wants him dead. Good, he's not done yet. Zeon stares at his own hand like it's a stranger. The mana and the power are supposed to be on a completely different level from when he was F rank, yet tears streak down his face. Yet what, exactly? He stands before a shadow beast with wings and multiple glowing eyes and admits he didn't leave a single scratch. Not one. His frustration boils over. Shit! Not even a scratch? The monster lunges, 4 purple eyes burning in the dark. Zeon reaches out with an outstretched hand, then hurls himself forward with a jagged weapon. Desperation isn't pretty, but it's honest. He clenches his fist. Golden energy and sand explode outward. A gloved hand bursts with power. But the shadow creature just snarls in the rain, unfazed. The gap between them is still a canyon. A blast of light erupts from the ground. Zeon lunges, his strike aimed at a gleaming orb. He lands, sand swirling around his boots. Still nothing. Still standing. A scarred figure yells in shock. What is this? He mutters about frequencies. Low, then high, his brain about to explode. The sensory overload is real. This fight is attacking more than his body. Zeon stands at the epicenter of a vortex. Dark energy spiraling around him. He unleashes a burst from his fire gauntlet, sand and light screaming together. His amber eye glows through the chaos, a single tear escaping. He's giving everything. Sand and silhouette clash in a storm. Zeon screams in the rain, teeth bared, eyes wild. He's fighting something he can't even touch, and it's breaking him. He raises his arm, sand energy building for one more strike, but the next panel shows a pale figure lying on the ground. What? A voice whispers. A hand grips a torso. What is this? Why is my body? Zeon lunges forward, clawing with sand-swirled energy, desperate. He advances through a dark passage, fingers clenched. In a wide shot, he braces with arms raised, dust and shadow swirling. The exhaustion is visible in his posture. A hand grabs him, holds him up. Damn, you're weak as hell. The voice is familiar, gravelly. Deordan. He looms over Zeon with that cruel grin pinning his arm. If you sleep here, your face will get crooked. Shithead. And just like that, the mentor's here. Deordan leans back, blood trailing from one eye, maniacal grin. Oh, old man, Zeon mutters. The elder just looks at him from under a heavy coat, white hair cascading. That grin says everything, I told you so. A wide shot shows the skeletal adversary lying defeated, a long sword embedded between it and a fallen beast. Zeon smirks, leaning against Deordan's shadow. Oh, your eardrums are all blown up? The old man chides. The fight is over, but the lesson is just beginning. Zeon clutches the edge of Deordan's cloak, a captured figure lying beneath them. The silver-haired elder raises his cloak to shield Zeon from something, rubble, and a glowing portal behind them. The real danger isn't the monster they just beat. Zeon kneels behind a cracked barrier, eyes fixed on a glowing sphere. Huh, what's this? He reaches out, a hand tightens a fur-trimmed sleeve nearby. Something ancient, something powerful, just waiting to be claimed. Zeon holds this glowing purple orb like he's inspecting a gas station sushi roll, asking if it's edible. Deordan's lying there injured, half-deaf, probably regretting every life choice that led to this mentorship. The old man warns him he'll die if he eats it, which Zeon absolutely does not hear because his eardrums are still in recovery mode from the last tutorial boss. Zeon pops the thing anyway because survival instincts are apparently a downloadable content he hasn't purchased. His face cycles through every emotion at once, confusion, then delight, then the kind of joy you only see when someone discovers their favorite snack has 0 calories. He's already mentally drafting a second serving. Achievement unlocked. Food poisoning. From hell. Zeon's body immediately files a formal complaint in the form of red spikes erupting from his torso like he's cosplaying as a rejected Dark Souls boss. Deordan's claw gauntlet flares with red energy, but he's not helping, he's just annoyed by the screaming. Zeon's on the ground doing his best impression of a pincushion, demanding to know what he just ate. The old man covers his good ear and tells him to get used to it, which is the most unhinged wellness advice I've ever seen in a mentor-student relationship. Zeon tries to push himself up and immediately discovers that gravity has opinions about this. He's coughing blood, coated in black residue, staring forward with the 1,000-yard gaze of someone who just learned that tastes good and body-destroying poison are not mutually exclusive. The fire gauntlet's still on his hand, which feels like a cruel joke. He's not even using his real power, and he's still getting nerfed this hard. Cut to later, Deordan's by the campfire looking like this was all part of a lesson plan, while Zeon's bandaged and dancing with another glowing orb like the trauma hasn't fully processed yet. This man has 2 modes, agony and snack time, with absolutely no transition period. The aftermath hits different. Zeon's face down in the dirt, tears or sweat pooling beneath him, the kind of broken that doesn't fix with a campfire nap. Deordan grips a massive stone-skulled opponent by the shoulder. Now then, shall we? And the tone shifts from training montage to something way more final. This isn't a lesson anymore. This is a field trip to mortality. Fast, Zeon lunges. The fire gauntlet meets armored scale in a shower of sparks that would make a blacksmith weep. Deordan's right there with him, white hair streaming, claw gauntlet tearing through the dark. They're fighting something that doesn't register on the survivable scale, and Zeon swinging a glowing crystal like it's a warranty he intends to void. The choreography hits different when both mentor and student are fighting for keeps. Deordan stands over the shattered remains, red eyes barely visible beneath the hood, while something segmented and wrong writhes in the cratered ground. The old man grips an ornate weapon with the casual indifference of someone who's done this 100 times before breakfast. Zeon is watching, and he's learning, not the technique, but the weight. The after that follows the during. Zeon speaks, voice trailing, "Mate," and the panel holds on his profile like he's about to say something he can't take back. A shadowed figure answers from the dark, voice torn, delivering the kind of ultimatum that doesn't leave room for negotiation. You die if you're weak. The sword rises. The fallen body doesn't move. This is the moment where Zeon understands that Deordan's training wasn't cruelty. It was preparation for a world that doesn't offer second chances. The cloaked figure stands with sword strapped across the back, surveying the scene like a funeral director who forgot to bring the flowers. Then kneels, silver hair spilling, whispering, "You awake?" To someone who definitely isn't. The blast that follows doesn't feel like victory. It feels like punctuation on a sentence that was already finished. Zeon unleashes. Golden sand and light shatter the air in a cataclysm that finally, looks like the power he's been hiding. The cloaked figure calls him a rude brat, which is rich coming from someone whose entire personality is aggressive grandpa. But the energy doesn't lie. This is Zeon unfiltered, and the desert is taking notes. Someone says, "Oh?" like they weren't expecting this level of commitment from the designated idiot. Feathers and shadows swirl as the taunt lands. The idiot's being serious, huh? And Zeon crouches low, amber eyes glowing, sand coiling around the fire gauntlet like it's finally remembering what it's supposed to be. Deordan's voice cuts through, telling him to stop messing around, which is hilarious because messing around is not how I'd describe the emotional damage crit Zeon just delivered to himself. The sand is awake. The question is whether Zeon can survive what he's becoming. The dust settles. Deordan stands in the canyon, weary in a way that has nothing to do with the fight and everything to do with the boy he's trying to keep alive. The explosion threw Zeon back like a rag doll. But this time, the old man wasn't trying to kill him, just making a point. The old man sighs and says exactly what's on every mentor's mind. Sigh, what are you doing, shithead? That's why you shouldn't have tried to kill. Training, in Deordan's book, comes with a side of profanity. A hooded figure mutters in disbelief. Without a single damage! While Deordan just glances sideways, the kind of tired that comes from knowing exactly how many times you've had to say, I told you so. A tense exchange hangs in the dusty air. Zeon collapses under the weight of the attack, spikes and dark energy tearing through his silhouette. And then the explanation comes. It expels all the impurities from your body and fills that space with mana. The queen ant's egg wasn't a poison, it was a catalyst. Zeon rises, electricity crackling across his body, eyes wide and glowing. He calls out, Old man! Not in anger this time, but in something closer to understanding. He can feel the mana filling every cell. Deordan steadies the younger man, gripping him like a father who doesn't know how to say, I care, without a wrestling move. Zeon strains, teeth bared, tears streaming, because the training isn't over and the cost is becoming real. The white-haired mentor smiles slyly. No, I didn't get to use them yet, as if holding back something worse. Zeon stands with his back turned, a whisper escaping him. Yeah, I know. He's starting to read the old man's silences. Zeon lies battered, half-conscious, and mutters, He could have actually died. Phew, hopefully he forgives me now. Meanwhile, the old man's voice echoes from the shadows. He's useless if he doesn't get stronger quickly. Tough love meets survival logic. The elder hoists Zeon upright, keeping him moving through the cavern. Comes the confused grunt. Zeon on his knees, sweat and dust clinging to his cloak, every tendon screaming for a break that isn't coming. The grizzled elder flashes a toothy grin, the kind that says, I'm about to enjoy this. He raises a single finger, and Zeon clutches his cloak, bracing. Something big is coming. Zeon peers through the cloak, sweat tracing his jaw. In the barren desert, two scorpion-like creatures close in on a fallen figure. The environment itself is testing them. An explosion of sand and light erupts, chunks of stone hurled through the air. The elder wrenches Zeon's head down as sand and flame roar past. Faster, my ass! Zeon clutches the fallen figure, shock freezing his movement. The elderly man smiles wryly. He's seen this before. Zeon collapses, breathless, muttering, What now? I'm running out of things to say when I'm surprised. Close on Zeon's wide amber eye, the weight of everything pressing down, a figure plummets through a blazing sky, shouting, Holy moly! As jagged rocks rush up. The training arc just became a survival fall. A hooded figure with glowing white eyes claws up a rocky wall. Others would call it desperate, but Zeons call it Tuesday. He strides across sunlit dunes, cloak snapping, and the camera lingers on those burning amber eyes in the shadows. He's not the same boy who fell into the mine. Two cloaked figures leap across the sandy landscape, calling out a name. Chalon? Zeon's eyes widen in fear. He shouts, Around! No! And then kneels, mouth agape, whispering, The world is vast. He's seeing the scale of what's out here for the first time. Zeon and Deordan tumble through a sandstorm, weapons sheathed, determination etched into their silhouettes. A solitary rock formation rises against the billowing sky, ominous, patient. They're not running from something. They're running to it. A massive, cloaked figure looms, shadowed and silent. Another stands bathed in warm light among jagged rocks. Then Zeon launches off a cliff, soaring into the sky, momentum, desperation, and a little bit of spite carrying him forward. A geyser of golden light erupts between the two figures, Zeon facing the beam as his sword-bearing ally stands guard. What? Someone shouts as the monocled elder finally reveals himself. The scheme is in motion, and Zeon is the blade they intend to sharpen. The sky billows with heavy, sepia clouds, a storm of dust and light ready to break. Something is on the horizon, and it's not going to ask permission. We arrive at Pabilsa's doorstep, and Daeordan greets him like an old war buddy who owes him money. The monocled elder lies in the sand, looking like he just finished a shift he wasn't paid for. Zeon watches these two ancients trade barbs and immediately realizes the power gap. His face says it all. There are levels to this awakened thing, and he's still in the tutorial zone. The group moves deeper into the desert, and a massive floating structure emerges from the haze, chained rocks suspended in midair like someone forgot to finish building the level. Pabilsa's territory is not your average oasis. Inside the cavern, it's a whole sunlit town, people moving, stalls trading, a hidden civilization thriving under the desert. Arya links arms with Zeon like they're on a field trip and the old men discuss business. A fight breaks out somewhere in the settlement. Flash of steel, a skull-adorned warrior trading blows under a balcony. This place has its own rules and apparently its own drama club. Daeordan corners someone and drops a line about counting lives taken. This man has been in the desert too long, and his bedside manner expired somewhere around Chapter 3. Zeon snaps at the old man, a rare flash of frustration breaking through his usual composure. The look on Daeordan's face says he filed that under progress. Daeordan deflects with a joke. You have no sense of humors, but Zeon isn't buying it. The tension is real, and it's about more than bad timing. Pabilsa watches the exchange and murmurs, Daeordan caring for someone is rare enough to be noteworthy. This kid must be special. Zeon stands in a dusty doorway, not sure if he's being praised or pitied. Then Kaylee arrives, Pabilsa's granddaughter, an enchanter with a headset and a toolbox that could redefine your understanding of crafting build. Zeon's eyes go wide. She's pretty and dangerous in equal measure. Daeordan interrogates her about a subspace bracelet she made. The old man is already shopping for gear, and Kaylee has that I made something way too good for this world expression. Kaylee is flustered meeting the legendary Sand Wraith, or at least the rumor of him. Pabilsa adjusts his monocle and explains the situation with the weary calm of a man who has seen too many young talents burn out. Zeon and Arya walk through the sunlit streets of the cavern town. Long shadows stretch ahead of them, and for a moment it almost feels like a normal day. Arya looks back with something between curiosity and warning. A memory surfaces, rain-soaked confrontation, a face in the blur. Zeon's eye sharpens. The past doesn't stay buried in this world, and every step forward seems to disturb something underneath. Someone shouts, "He's a monster in human skin!" And Arya plants herself with a defiant stance. She's not running from whatever Zeon did. If anything, she's standing closer. Kaylee shows off her masterpiece, a subspace gauntlet with self-repair function that would make any engineer weep with envy. Arya gestures towards Zeon's fire gauntlet and suggests equipping a fire element item here could unlock something unimaginable. Zeon hesitates. Can he really take something this valuable? Pabilsa shrugs like it's spare change. The manic grin on Kaylee's face says, keep it forever, and the handshake that follows seals a deal with no fine print yet. Zeon and Arya lock hands in a sudden grip, some kind of test, or maybe just the way these people say, good luck. They stagger back in a gust of motion and then sprint toward each other in a dusty courtyard. A cry echoes through the cavern, Archelon's scream. It's those bastards! Pabilsa's composure cracks. Who are those bastards? The question hangs in the air like a blade that hasn't landed yet. The calm breaks. Zeon charges up a sandy wall shouting, scavengers, and the world narrows to a single goal. Whoever or whatever is out there just became the target, and Zeon has something new in his arsenal to test. The scavengers hit the cavern like a tide of desperation. Zeon's eyes go wide because he knows exactly what that reputation means. Arya's already at the door, tool belt rattling, trying to buy them time. She's clenching her fist so hard her knuckles go white, and when she turns to shout about gathering fighters, Pabilsa's voice cuts through like a blade. No! Daeordan steps forward with that manic red aura flaring around him, holding a cup like he's at a tea party, and the scavengers are just uninvited guests. The old man doesn't even blink, he smirks. Gramps lunges with a roar that rattles the cavern walls, and Zeon finds himself on the back foot, stammering, 50? At a price he never agreed to. The claw gauntlet gleams with a challenge. Scared? He mutters, damn it, I fell for such a cheap provocation, the same trap every impulsive protagonist tumbles into, except this time the stakes are lives, not pride. He closes his eyes, tries to center himself, but the sand whispers back, How can I defeat an awakened whose rank is higher than mine? That doubt is a luxury he cannot afford right now. Pabilsa exchanges a glance with Arya. Are you sure about this? While Deordan plants his sword and delivers the simplest truth this world has to offer. Defeat is death. That's it. The old monocle elder mutters, if that kid can just bare his fangs, and as if on cue, a shout echoes, Oi, kid! Zeon looks up to see a giant eye peering down from the rock ceiling. This is happening now. A hooded rider on horseback screams, Show them who the Black Shark is! And the name lands like a death sentence. Riders pour into the tunnel, blades drawn, and Deordan's grin widens. This is exactly what he wanted. But when Zeon's sand erupts, swirling golden particles that bend light and earth, the enemy's confidence cracks. The sand's moving. They scream retreat, but the sand does not negotiate. Deordan roars, You rascal! Let her hands free! Apparently, Arya got caught in the crossfire. Zeon's gauntlet blazes, sand-laced fire spiraling outward as he blasts the captor clean off their feet. A red energy slash sweeps the field, and the enemy scout gasps in disbelief. He blocked it! Zeon stands in the dust, not running, not hiding, just standing. That's his answer. He charges, fire gauntlet trailing a red-hot arc, sand coiling behind him like a second pair of arms. The blade meets the scavenger's parry, and for a split second, the world holds its breath. Then the punch lands, golden energy shatters armor and sends a body sprawling. But before Zeon can feel victory, a voice cuts through. Killing another human will be a bigger problem for you. Deordan and Pabilsa step in like a wall of old wisdom, and the elder's voice hardens. They're not humans! They enjoy killing people. They torture and slaughter for no reason. Zeon's head swims. Is that true, or is it just the excuse every killer gives themselves? He looks at the blood on his gloves and wonders if the line between man and monster blurs in the sand, just like everything else. But the scavenger leader isn't done. You'll get slowly chewed alive while hearing your family scream, he hisses, and Zeon's amber eyes harden into something ancient. The sand rises around him like a promise. One final clash, sand and steel, fire and fear, and Zeon emerges from the dust cloud, gauntlet smoking, enemy crumpled at his feet. He doesn't know if he killed him. He doesn't know if it matters anymore. He grips his sword, turns his back on the fallen, and walks into the tunnel's mouth. The sand settles behind him, but the question doesn't. What kind of person survives a world where mercy is a liability? The Scarlet Sand Brawler kneels in the sand, grinning like a man who has seen this dance before. At his feet lie Klain and Mashimoto, names called out like a roll call of the fallen, their blood soaking into the desert. The brawler points forward, telling the unseen enemy that these weren't ordinary men. No ordinary guy could hurt them, and that's a warning dressed up as praise. Then the camera swings to Zeon, standing inside a vortex of golden sand, looking up at something monstrous. His eyes are white-hot, and the sand answers his call like it has been waiting for this moment. The hooded brawler steps forward, challenging Zeon directly. Show me the power you're hiding in the sand. He wants the truth, not the fire gauntlet disguise. The brawler's aura flares as his eyes lock onto Zeon. This isn't a spar, it's a test of identity, a demand to stop pretending and become what he was always meant to be. Zeon answers with a sand-wreathed fist, amber eyes blazing through the dust. What's next? He shouts, and the battlefield erupts into a storm of gold and red. The brawler vanishes into the dust cloud, reappearing behind the wind magic user with a blade-like energy slash. Where is he? The enemy screams, but he's already inside their guard. Zeon's hand slams into the ground, frustration bleeding through every line of his body. Damn it, he knows he's been outmaneuvered by a close-range fighter who reads the battlefield like a poem. But the brawler isn't done. He roars a battle cry that stitches the dead and the living together. For Klain, for Elia, for Shivaria, for Kale, every name a scar on the air. Zeon's eyes go wide. He has never seen Deordan fight like this, feral, ancestral, like he is swinging for something older than strategy. What? The shock is written in every pixel of this panel. The wind magic user twists, tearing off his gauntlet in a desperate move. He took off the gauntlet and got out, a gambit to change the flow of the fight, but it might cost him everything. Zeon grips his own fire gauntlet, breathing hard. The sand swirls around him like a patient ocean waiting for his command. He steadies himself, because the next exchange will decide everything. The brawler studies the opponent with cold, clinical clarity. It must be a wind type, rare even among magic types. He added physical force using sand. Every word is a scalpel peeling back the enemy's strategy. I know your methods now. The brawler lunges, sand exploding around his fist. You can't use the same power anymore, and the battlefield becomes a classroom of pain. Then the verdict lands, cold and final. A damn magic-type awakener without his amplifier could never win a close-range fight. It is not a threat, it is a law of nature in this world. Zeon's eye catches a glint of amber light reflected in his own pupil. He is not just watching, he is learning, absorbing the lesson without a teacher's explanation. Instinct, honed by survival. Pobilsa's voice cuts through the sandstorm with a quiet, grudging pride, but he learnt it instinctively. It is the closest thing to praise the old man has ever given, and it stings more than any insult. The chapter ends with Deordan standing tall in the stormy desert wind, heat shimmers rising around his silhouette. Behind him, a young man kneels in the sand, blood pooling at his hand, another name added to the roll call of those who paid the price of this lesson. The sandstorm settles just long enough for Zeon to realize he's still breathing. He says that was a close one, that it could have been really dangerous, understatement of the century, because the man just survived a murder attempt masked as training. Deordan is not impressed. He screams about how Zeon almost got stabbed, because the old man saw the whole thing and is now channeling that fear into a volume setting that shakes the sand off nearby rocks. Zeon looks at his own bloody hand and screams back, asking what he did wrong. Deordan gives him a look that says everything, teeth bared, red eyes blazing, the kind of expression that makes you check your own survival instincts. The old man leans in with that scarred, weathered face and tells him to go back. Not because he's cruel, because going back means surviving, and Deordan has lived long enough to know which mistakes don't heal. Zeon stands in the desert dust, stunned and grateful. Arya wraps an arm around him and announces to the world that he fought the whole black shark alone, and there's no mockery in her voice, just awe that the kid she traveled with is standing at all. But the guilt hits him in the quiet. He admits he just wanted Mashimoto to pass out and disappear, not die, just vanish so he wouldn't have to carry the memory. He knew they were evil and that they deserved to be killed, but knowing doesn't make the blood on your hands feel any less warm. A cloaked figure looms behind, haunting him with the same truth, that they deserved it. But Zeon's eyes are hollow because the question was never whether they deserved it, it was whether he can still call himself human after delivering the sentence himself. Then he exhales. He says Gramps is right, that Deordan Gramps is just clumsy at expressing himself, and Zeon has finally learned to read the gruff language the old man speaks. It's not a joke, it's an epiphany. Arya, ever the caretaker, asks what they should fix about him, because she sees the cracks and wants to help mortar them. Zeon admits he feels relieved and guilty at the same time, which is the most honest thing he's said all chapter. And then Deordan, the man who has killed more people than Zeon has met, mutters under his breath that the poor kid is going through all this because of useless adults. It's the closest thing to an apology a century-old killer can muster. In the quiet of a stone chamber, the old elder, Pobilsa, the monocle man, delivers the line that will stick in Zeon's ribs like a shard of glass. If this torments you, that's proof you're still human. Not a consolation, a diagnosis. Zeon clenches his gauntleted fist, and the sand answers, not with violence, but with presence. The fire gauntlet flares once, and for a moment, he looks less like a survivor and more like a weapon deciding who to be. The scene shifts to the forge, where master smiths swing hammers in a rhythm older than any system or rank crest. Arya watches with wide eyes. She's never seen this many smiths in one place. The elder Pobilsa says it's to be expected, as if forging legendary weapons is just Tuesday for this crew. A glowing blade arcs overhead, and someone mutters that it has countless enchantments, hundreds. Arya whispers that she can't believe a human made this either, because in a world where monsters and awakened run everything, it's nice to remember that people still build things. Pobilsa lurches forward through the corridor, gripping the doorway as if the forge's heat and light are calling him to action. The craftsmen recoil as the blade's power hums, steam wobbling the air. This weapon isn't just metal, it's a statement. Pobilsa, the wise old monocle man, gazes into the middle distance and says a single word that cuts through every clinging hammer and crackling ember. Unfortunately. Pabilsa pushes back in his chair, smoke curling around his weathered face, and tells Zeon not to give him nonsense about disciplining him. They have something new to deal with, something that makes a blade with hundreds of enchantments feel like a side piece. Drop in, a cluster of elves tumbling out of a spatial tear like they mistimed a portal cooldown. 3 grab at empty air, and the only thing more lost than their footing is their dignity. The first one with a temper comes in screaming, white hair, purple eyes, the whole ethereal rage starter pack. She did not cross dimensions to discuss trade routes. Off on a ledge, Zeon gets his first look at a whole new species and reacts like a kid at an aquarium. The elves, meanwhile, spot the humans and see lunch. Zeon spirals, sweating, muttering about getting used as bait, and drops a name for the continuity nerds, Kaylee Nuna, still his gold standard for actually competent. Pabilsa's granddaughter, rent-free. A giant foot fills the frame, never a good sign, and 2 figures crane up into the universal anime. Oh no. Zeon and an elf, about to have a very bad afternoon. The elf archers fan into an ambush line, bows up, faces set to exterminate. One's already charging, one's already cowering. Tribal discipline runs the full range from zealot to liability. A fanged elf barks the plan, send the humans down to lure the monster. Grim, efficient, deeply unflattering. To them, the humans aren't people, just bait with legs. Zeon, ever the reasonable one, asks the obvious from the back. Why exactly do you need us for this? Then his face hits full, what did I walk into, panic bubble included? The warriors settle into a rain-soaked forest, bows trained, blades low. This isn't a standoff anymore, it's an execution waiting on a start whistle. Then the flashback detonates, a dragon thing crackling blue, chest cannon charging. The narration calls it a fear he'd never felt, even after a lifetime of monsters. So, worse than everything. Cool. Wolves with burning red eyes pour in, flanked by masked figures wearing the same crimson glare. The framing's deliberate, not an attack, a hunt, and the humans are the quarry. Our boy clutches his mouth as a lightning-wreathed shape rises behind him. The text lands it quietly, a different kind of will to survive, and then he breaks, tears and all. The memory coughs up a nightmare, white hair, red eyes, standing in the rain like he's waiting for a cue. The close-ups cycle to rage, the single burning eye, the slow, I'm not walking away from this dread. The thing lunges, dark energy trailing, then snap, back to now. An elf grits out the punchline, that's a human. A human, said like it's somehow scarier than the monster? An archer draws, blue energy coiling the arrow, she needs him dead. Behind her, a long-haired elf in an icy vortex knocks her own shot, the commander, and clearly the one whose name's on the unit. Then the sky tears open, and a blue vortex swallows a man in a dark suit whole, screaming as it shreds his position. Whatever just arrived, it did not RSVP. A disheveled Zeon screams, "Oi, you crazy at something off-screen," and then someone yells, "Gramps." Because of course it's Gramps. A white and blue blast rewrites the terrain, and a cloaked figure raises a fist, blue energy crackling down. The desert's about to get one more reason to fear old men. And there he is. White hair, beard, eyes burning red, a sword dressed in dark aura. Not the cranky mentor who nags Zeon about his posture, the veteran they call the Butcher. And now, we find out why. An archer shrieks 2 names into the smoke, Soberon, Naelka, the elves caught in his radius. Another voice screams to hurry up. Then the commander calls it, formation, kill the human, no talking. An elder reels back as a wet crack answers for him. A cloaked shape looms over 2 tangled fighters. Somewhere, a voice mutters, I clearly killed, and the body count politely disagrees. A human hand clamps an elf by the face while the rest scream to let Johora go. Turns out, grabbing someone's friend by the skull is a great way to get the whole tribe's attention. The elves level every bow they've got. Answer me. A bubble cuts the dark. I'm asking who you killed this time. And Deordan, red-eyed and grinning, roars back the only answer he has, to stay alive. Spikes punch up through bodies, red demonic shapes raining down. 3 elves freeze as a shadow swallows them, a polished boot drops, and a red beam cracks the ground into a crater. He is not pacing himself. Two elves wail in the debris, and the line that explains the whole war drifts past. It doesn't matter how many humans die for us. That's the world view, and exactly what turns a survivor into a butcher. The field goes weightless, rocks drifting as Deordan roars, all because you think like that. And there's Zeon, hood up, voice small, asking the question he already dreads. Gramps, what is he talking about? Zeon peeks out from the hood, and you can watch it land. The man who lectured him about not becoming a killer keeps a body count of his own. The mentor isn't just tough, he's something Zeon has no word for yet. An elf tumbles through the air screaming about the monster that was before the sentence dies. And the monster answers, an orange-eyed silhouette in the smoke, a lazy question mark floating over it like it's mildly curious. Zeon, fully lost, mutters the realest line of the chapter. What the hell are these elves even saying? Around him, one elf shrieks in fury, another splits the panel with a question, drive him where? A pale elf folds backward, blood erupting, asking why the world is the way it is. No time for an answer. A red blade carves the smoke, a dragon snaps forward, and a hooded figure braces to meet it. Soberon, a name screamed twice, once in grief, once in rage, and gliding out of the dust, white hair, red eyes, dark cloak. Deordan, already shopping for the next target. He hauls an elf up by the skull and asks, almost politely, your village is nearby, isn't it? Answer me. The man does negotiation, the way a landslide does landscaping. The threats curdle into begging. Don't come near me, stay back, as a young elf folds in on himself before a long-haired figure in a fur-lined cloak. Nobody stays brave once the butcher makes eye contact. Deordan lunges, white energy trailing the blade, and an elf finally asks the question under all of it. That's the elf's village, so why would a human? The sentence doesn't get to finish. They never do. He grins and says thanks to a man he's about to kill, like he's closing out a transaction, then lunges again, that ornate sword carving a wide, screaming arc. Manners and murder, same swing. A sonic wave flattens what's left, and when the dust thins, there's one figure kneeling in the sand, a vortex of grit still howling behind him. The village got quiet the hard way. A short-haired elf woman looks up through tears and says the worst possible thing, he went to the village. Beside her, another elf laughs and sobs at once. At least I'm still alive. The bar is on the floor. A battered survivor slumps in the rubble, coughing, doing the math on his own ribs. That crazy Gramps, he mutters. Without the armor, I'd be a bag of fragments. Even the people Deordan didn't kill are filing complaints. And Zeon, voice barely there, calls out one more time, Gramps, staring at the dark, monstrous shape his mentor has become. A gloved hand lies still in the bloodstains. Whatever Zeon thought Deordan was, this is something else entirely. Zeon grits his teeth in a dark storm of brown earth shards, strain written across every line of his face. Then the vision fractures. A masked Deordan grips a man by the collar and snarls a line that should freeze any listener. I clearly killed you decades ago. A voice gasps the name that connects all of it. Gramps, but... And we're pulled under into whatever surfaced this memory. We surface into ash and smoke. Zeon, hooded, stands at the edge of a ruined settlement, fires still burning. A village that stood only moments ago is now a graveyard of stone and ember. He gasps the obvious question, am I already too late? And the panels answer with corpses sprawled across the courtyard, white-haired elves with pointed ears, lying still as the embers drift past. Zeon collapses into the dust, exhausted and winded, but his eyes snap open. A voice in the carnage changes everything. Someone's alive! The cloaked narrator is now a frantic first responder, pleading with a blood-drenched survivor who screams back at him. The kind of scream that means you found someone who's still breathing, but not by much. Cut to the cause. Deordan, white hair, red eyes burning, dark cloak, swings a blade that carves a red arc through a robed figure. Headless bodies hit the floor as the old man glares through the smoke with a look that says, I'm still counting. The survivor's plea, why do you have to go this far? How could you kill them when they surrendered? Arrives too late, the question swallowed by golden explosions and collapsing stone. A figure in a red cloak is thrown backward, white hair streaming, while another body in a brown cloak crashes through debris. Deordan, scruffy beard and dark cloak, swings a dark weapon upward toward a spiraling black vortex, the kind of attack that doesn't miss, just asks the universe to forget what was there. Golden energy arcs through a ruined wasteland as Deordan plants a sword hilt, first into the ground, the shockwave sending everything airborne. When the dust clears, Deordan stands over a field of carnage, unconscious bodies, Zeon in dark gray, a black armored glove, crumpled face down at his feet. He looks down with a quiet that's more terrifying than any roar. I kept thinking on the way there. Zeon asks the obvious question from the ground, and Deordan, red eyes glowing through the rubble, answers with a single word that lands like a judge's gavel. And? The unseen speaker presses the argument no one wants to make. But how could you kill them when they surrendered and had no will to fight? Doc! A slashing sound effect answers instead of words. Zeon crouches low, amber eyes hard, fingerless glove tight, every muscle coiled. Then the void asks the question that breaks the silence clean in half. Was the scavenger you met in Archeon your nemesis who killed your family? And a manic man with bloodshot eyes screams the counter-argument through clenched teeth? A speech bubble answers from white space. I never thought that excused me from But the sentence doesn't finish. Deordan is seen through a cracked obsidian barrier, trapped and watching. Zeon lies gritting his teeth through glass shards. Then the frame widens. Deordan stands over a defeated opponent and delivers the cold thesis. You assigned humans to be victims so that they wouldn't have to despair about their own situation. The philosophy that justifies genocide lands without apology. A scarred man with a vertical line through his eye grits the punchline. After all, they can't have the slaves who power the city dying. Stone spikes erupt from the ground in punctuation. An older man roars with wild white hair and a thick mustache, rage carved into every wrinkle. The casual cruelty is the point. These elves have built their survival on human bones, and they're not interested in a refund. Deordan, white hair, dark hood, an ornate sword in his grip, stands over a collapsed Zeon. Zeon looks up from the dirt, blood smudged on his mouth, dark hair plastered to his forehead. Deordan calls across the wasteland to a slender figure in a red-lined cloak. Can you say the same thing after finding out what I know? Zeon's face, grimy and defiant, says he's not done absorbing the damage yet. Deordan stands with his back to us, wind whipping his cloak. He delivers the hard truth to Zeon, still young enough to mistake recklessness for justice. You don't even understand their lives. But Zeon, blood on his mouth and a bruise blooming somewhere unseen, answers with the one line that reframes the entire arc. Gramps, you told me never to give up. I won't give up. The student reminding the teacher of the lesson he taught. Deordan, red eyes glowing, stares back at his student with something between pride and grief, the look of a man who knows what he's made and hates that he made it right. The frame tightens. Amber eye meets red, 2 generations of stubborn refusing to break. A hooded figure in tactical gear touches down, hand on dusty ground, asking about supplies. Then Deordan, grim, turns away. You'll understand once you're back in Archeon. Zeon stands calmly among fallen bodies, the rubble of the elf village, unconscious forms with pointed ears and light-colored hair. He looks over his shoulder at the ruins, then moves through a shattered chamber filled with wooden barrels. A white-haired elf with pointed ears stares down into a stone sarcophagus glowing with blue light, gold artifacts and a blue orb scattered inside, the kind of loot table that rewrites what you thought you knew. Zeon kneels by a dark bloodstain, picking up jewelry. Even their texture feels weird. His amber eye narrows at a glowing bead on a string, the camera pushing in like the panel itself is suspicious. A dark tablet glows with blue text and a circular diagram, ancient, alien, archival. Can all of this really have been shaped? The sentence hangs as Zeon stares at a wall of shimmering cyan runes, the culmination of the massacre's secret. A gloved hand presses against a dark surface covered in glowing runes. I never thought weirdly about monsters or other races. The voice beneath the narration admits something fragile. Then the scene widens to Deordan standing over a defeated opponent repeating the cold line, and assigned humans to be victims. Zeon, on his knees, shouts back the answer from the dirt, so that they wouldn't have to despair about their own situation. A pale-skinned figure grips dark fabric and delivers the final piece. If someone brought them to Earth, the word hangs. Then Zeon crouches in the wreckage and completes the thought. Then this world. Another figure, cloaked, stands over a fallen body as the theory crystallizes. Something pulled these non-human races here, and it wasn't a portal misfire. The revelation lands with the weight of a tectonic shift. The whole apocalypse might have been orchestration. A bloody pile of clothing and gear sits abandoned on the stone floor. A silver sword, a scroll, a small circular object, all soaked dark red. The caption sums it without sentiment: humans' belongings. A wooden coffin packed with blood-stained corpses confirms the body count. Then a violent impact. The panel goes white with black speed lines, followed by golden explosions that shatter stone boulders into fragments as Zeon stands amidst the chaos, dark coat billowing, trails of golden energy swirling around him like he's the eye of a storm he made himself. Zeon crashes into the ground, dark hair wild, golden energy rings circling his body as an impact crater widens beneath him. Sharp sound effects carve across stone as debris goes airborne. The camera pulls back to show cracked pillars half buried in sand, a ruined architectural site that was someone's home before all of this. A white-haired elf lies face down in the dirt, arrows scattered beside her. The desert has a way of burying history. A tiny bat-like creature flies across the golden sand dunes, the only movement in the silence. Then Zeon, gray hair plastered to his forehead, pants heavily, a dark cloak draped over exhausted shoulders. He looks up, amber eyes catching the dim light, and speaks the line that turns all this devastation into momentum. I can offer you. A deal extends into the void, an invitation, a threat, a promise. Whatever comes next, he's done being the one who just reacts.